The wind off the narrow sea carried a briny chill up the cliffs beneath the eyrie, teasing loose strands of Sansa Stark's copper-red hair as she gazed from a moonlit balcony. Somewhere below, the dark waters frothed against stone like whispered conspiracies. Above her, a night sky unmarred by cloud glittered with cold, distant fire, stars set so high they seemed to promise safety and indifference all at once. She had learned to love such silences, the hush after young Lord Robert's fits, the hush that followed Lysa Arryn's death when the great castle perched in its lonely eyrie felt like a mausoleum. In quiet she could hear her own heart, the unsteady rhythm of a girl who once dreamed of songs and gallant knights but now mapped every word, gesture, and glance for veiled daggers. Behind her the solar doors sighed open. Soft slippers, deliberate steps. She did not turn, she knew the cadence of those footfalls long before a voice, warm, urbane, unhurried, broke the fragile stillness. "You should rest, my lady. Tomorrow's journey begins early and the mountain paths are never kind to bleary eyes." Peter Baelish was a silhouette at the threshold, lamplight outlining the sly elegance of his form. Shadows draped his tunic of somber velvet, a thin silver mockingbird clasp nestled at his throat, catching the flame. The cocksure tilt of his head, the half-smile always dancing at the corner of his mouth, promised answers to riddles unasked. Sansa gathered her shawl tighter. "I have rested enough for 10 lives." Her voice had grown stronger these last moons, less timid songbird, more quiet winterwolf. "The moon keeps me company." Littlefinger stepped onto the balcony, folding his hands atop the stone balustrade. Below them the world fell away into darkness. "Company," he echoed softly, "is a gift seldom offered without cost. Even the moon demands tides and madness in payment." He tilted his gaze to her. "Am I to believe you prefer it to mortal conversation?" "You speak often, Lord Peter," she replied, refusing the bait of feigned innocence. "I should not wish to burden you with further discourse." "Oh, Sansa." He murmured her name like the first gentle note of a lute string. "Your words never burden me. Each is a pearl I keep close." A pause. "We depart at dawn. The Vale Lords gather in Gulltown and they will look to the Lady of Winterfell for guidance." The title still startled her, for Winterfell was half a world away and in ruin. Yet she nodded. "I will be ready." Littlefinger's gaze drifted toward the horizon where a thin silver gash marked the sea. "The Lords of the Vale have been restive. Some still cling to memories of Jon Arryn. Others resent the Aerys' isolation. But most crave stability. A sweet, reasonable peace." He turned back to her, eyes the shade of tarnished coins. "And you, my dear, are the sweetest promise they have ever tasted." She felt the weight of that gaze and forced her breath steady. "You promised them the North." "I promised them tomorrow," he corrected, smile sharpening. "And in tomorrow all things are possible, provided one knows which strings to pluck." He lifted a gloved hand, brushing an errant lock from her cheek, a gesture as gentle as it was possessive. "Trust me, Sansa. Together we shall give them a song they will never forget." The journey down the Giant's Lance unfolded slow as thawing ice, each bend in the treacherous goat track revealing a new vista of cloud-soaked valleys. Peter insisted on a litter for Sansa draped in creamy Myrish lace so fine it might have been spider silk. He rode beside, cloak snapping in alpine gusts, exchanging nods and whispers with each line of sure-footed mules and knights. Sometimes she caught fragments, names, debts, whispered promises of grain or gold, each another knot in the net he cast. At night they camped beneath soaring pines, fires dotting the dark like fallen stars. Sansa sat beneath a russet cloak by the largest blaze, listening as Lord Nestor Royce's booming laughter mingled with Ser Lyn Corbray's sardonic quips. Ale passed, venison sizzled, yet always Peter orbited closest to her, shepherding tales toward conclusions that flattered House Arryn's orphan or praised the honor of House Stark. And when the Lord's eyes slid toward her across flames, she met them with calm courtesy, letting silence and her house's ancient dire wolf speak dignity enough. On the fourth dusk, an evening fog rolled in from the east like ghostly wool. Sentries' torches shimmered. Sansa retreated to her embroidered tent, but a flutter of anticipation kept sleep distant. She rose, studied herself in a polished silver looking-glass, a young woman clad in midnight blue velvet, hair parted and braided into a Dornish cascade that framed cheekbones newly honed by tribulation. She scarcely recognized the girl who once imagined the court of King's Landing as a pageant of chivalry and whispered love. A scratch at the flap. "May I enter?" "Of course, Lord Peter." He ducked inside bearing a small casket of carved ebony. "A gift," he said, setting it upon the travel desk. She opened the lid, a necklace of black tourmalines alternating with tiny pearls, midnight and moonlight in perfect symmetry. "They belong to my mother," he said. I find it only fitting that the most radiant woman of her generation entrust them to the most radiant of this one. I cannot accept this. You can, he insisted, voice velvet soft. And you must. Symbols matter, my sweetling. Tomorrow, when you stand beside me before the gates of the moon, the veil will see you adorned not as a hostage, but as the queen you were meant to be. She lifted the necklace, feeling its cool weight. Queen. Peter's eyes gleamed. A crown need not be hammered in gold to command fealty. Marry me, Sansa. Let the veil rally behind us, the north behind you, the riverlands behind me. The throne in King's Landing sits precarious as a babe on a Dornish spear point. We will set it right. Cold shivers traced her spine. You would wed me for power. For love, first, he whispered. Power merely ensures love endures. He touched her hand where it clutched the tourmalines. Think on it this night. Tomorrow comes swiftly. Sleep abandoned her. She walked the camp's perimeter under torchlight, air pungent with pine sap and horse sweat. In the hush she weighed choices, memories fluttering like crows. Joffrey's cruelty, Cersei's smile, Tyrion's kindness. Don't trust anybody, Arya's voice echoed. The heart tree of Winterfell swathed in red leaves and snow. Peter offered safety and vengeance entwined. Could she seize one without choking on the other? Jon would counsel honor, Arya, defiance, her mother, caution, her father. Father would tell her that every choice carves a path the feet cannot see until long after. But Father's head rested still upon Blackwater stones. She returned just before dawn. Peter waited inside her tent, candle guttering. She set the necklace upon her collarbone. I will marry you, she said, voice steady. But only if you swear a vow before gods and men that the North shall remain free and untouched, and that you will raise no hand against my family nor against those who bend the knee to House Stark. His answering smile was indulgent, triumphant, tinged with something deeper. On my honor, he said, kneeling. I swear. She offered her hand. He kissed her knuckles, a brush of warmth that lingered like a brand. Gulltown unfurled beside them days later, a bustle of masts and gull cries. Word of their betrothal preceded their arrival, spreading like wildfire through taverns and keeps. The mockingbird weds the she-wolf of Winterfell. Crowds thronged cobbled streets, cheering Sansa's name with surprising fervor. Perhaps they saw in her a memory of Catelyn Tully's grace, perhaps simply the promise of change. The sept within the crenellated harbor fort smelled of candles and bay leaves. A septon in sea-green robes joined their hands before 100 curious lords. Sansa's voice did not quaver as she spoke the vows. Peter slid a ring of Valyrian steel upon her finger, slender, dark, precious, its surface rippling with underlit fire. When the ceremony ended, applause rose like surf. A feast followed, roast duck with cherries, trout in almond crust, a subtlety of ships carved from sugared dough. Bards played the Dornishman's wife, then the bear and the maiden fair. Littlefinger toasting with Lysini wine, his eyes never straying far from his bride. Sansa drank sparingly, schooling her features into mild gratitude. She watched alliances kindle across tables. Bronze-armored Royces conversing with green-cloaked hunter men, red forts smiling at Belmore's. Each handshake, each clink of goblet, wove stronger nets for Peter Baelish. Before dawn, they boarded a sleek galley bound south. The royal court had summoned the new Lord Protector to King's Landing to review matters of regency. A courtesy, perhaps, more likely a test of strength. Peter prowled the deck while cry-red sunrise stained waters like fresh spilled wine. Varys will be vexed, he mused, tapping the railing. Cersei will bristle. Marjorie Tyrell, 7 save her, will simper and calculate. But they will all underestimate you. He drew Sansa close as gulls wheeled overhead. Let them see a winter rose. They will forget its thorns until the flesh is rent. She looked to the horizon where the capital awaited like a gilded snare. Her fingers brushed the cool steel of the ring. I will be ready, she said. King's Landing still stank of tanneries, offal, and desperation. The galley moored at the fish market wharf. Small folk gawked at banners of the mockingbird quartered with the direwolf, sutured by a thread of Aran falcon azure. Sansa ascended the muddy hill in a litter, curtains parted so faces might see their future queen. They lodged in the Red Keep's maiden vault, rooms once used to imprison Targaryen princesses. Peter called it symbolism, Sansa called it sobering. Spies scurried, silver-haired pages, black-robed kettle-slingers, a washerwoman whose eyes lingered too long. Littlefinger welcomed them all, dispensing smiles and coins. On the third day the court assembled in the throne room, shafts of dusty light spearing from high windows onto the iron throne, a twisted sculpture of swords that seemed to bleed rust. Queen Regent Cersei Lannister descended from a dais in gilded scales, her smirk sharp as a skinning knife. Beside her, King Tommen, pale, earnest, still a boy, fidgeted. Peter bowed. Sansa curtsied with measured grace, eyes lowered just enough. Rumor had reached them, Marjorie Tyrell detained on charges of infidelity, Ser Loras thrown in the black cells. The realm teetered. Cersei's gaze raked Sansa. Lady Sansa, I feared you'd vanished after the regrettable incident with my son Joffrey. Sansa lifted her eyes, northern ice meeting lioness gold. Your grace, grief sent me wandering. Yet the gods guided me at last to safety. Safety, the queen repeated, lips curling. In Lord Baelish's arms? Peter chuckled softly. My arms are open to all sorts in need. Even kings need bankers, queens need whispers. Indeed. Cersei stepped closer, skirts rustling like dry leaves. Tell me, Lord Baelish, how fares the Vale now under your protection? Prosperous, he said, and loyal to crown and realm. His smile did not reach his eyes. Might I present their fealty and substance? 10,000 knights and mountain clansmen stand ready to march wherever your grace directs. A hush rippled across courtiers. 10,000 men could balance the embattled scales of power. Cersei's nostrils flared, whether gratitude or alarm, Sansa could not tell. Most generous, the queen managed. Yet the crown's coffers run thin. Horses require oats, knights silver. Peter spread empty hands. Then let me serve as master of coin once more. In a moon's turn the vaults will brim. A murmur of approval. Cersei's jaw tightened. She opened her mouth, perhaps to parry, when the throne room doors crashed wide. A Tyrell herald bustled in, face ashen. Rumors of a Sparrow army within the city walls reached shouts, a riot near the September of Baelor, Ironborn raids along the Shield Islands, grain ships seized by pirates. Cersei's composure splintered. Peter swept forward, voice calm as a surgeon's blade. Your grace, allow me to address each matter in turn. The Vale fleet can escort grain convoys, my agents in Bravos can negotiate loans for new ships. As for the Sparrows. His smile charmed like cordial laced with hemlock. Faith thrives when rulers wobble. We must show them the crown stands firm. Tommen stared, wide-eyed. Lord Baelish, will you help us? Always, your majesty. He bowed so deeply his hair brushed marble. Together we shall restore peace. In that moment Sansa felt the court shift, lords leaning toward the mockingbird, whispers germinating. Cersei sensed it too, her glare scorched invisible paths across the floor. Yet she forced honeyed words, acquiescing to Littlefinger's counsel. That night, Raven's sword-bearing missives to White Harbor, Riverrun, even Sunspear. Peter's quills scratched like knives, each letter coaxing debts, dredging loyalties, sowing seeds of discord. Sansa sat across, memorizing every flourish. Sometimes he looked up, eyes glinting with delight, teacher proud of an apt pupil. Tomorrow, he said, we host a supper for the small council. Wear the silver dress with moonstones. Innocence disarms them more than armor. When will we remove Cersei? She asked. All in due time, he murmured, sealing a scroll with crimson wax. Queens are like vines upon a tower. Sever too rashly and the stones may tumble. We shall prune her slowly. Days bled into weeks. Rumors spiraled. Tyrell bannermen mustering in Bitterbridge. Euron Greyjoy crowned in Pike. The High Sparrow gaining acolytes. Peter navigated each tempest with eerie composure, pivoting factions until the crown's policies echoed his proposals. Gold cloaks once loyal to the Lannisters found new purses. Sweet corn shipments bypassed Tyrell docks and purchased Vale grain at discount. Thirsty Sellsword companies lined the Blackwater, awaiting miraculous funding. Sansa assumed a subtler role, hosting afternoon teas where she commiserated with baronesses about harvest shortages, strolling the Godswood with Tommen to speak of northern elk, visiting orphanages draped in winter roses. The small folk began to murmur the she-wolf's kindness, her hush restoring hope. One misty morning, she found herself in the abandoned chambers of Maegor's Holdfast, sorting through ledgers of the Royal Mint. Ink-blotched pages revealed staggering embezzlements. She showed them to Peter. Interesting, he purred, tracing a column of vanished silver stags. Ser Harry's SWIFT will soon be in want of a retirement. A sly wink. You see? Already you wear daggers beneath your gloves. She felt a thrill and a chill. The fall came early, cold winds slithering through the city, coaxing heathfires. With them arrived storm clouds of unrest. The Faith militant arrested Ser Osney Kettleblack. Riots flared near Flea Bottom. Cersei, cornered, turned to wine and witchcraft whispers. Peter urged patience. One evening a raven arrived from Riverrun, Ser Brynden Tully had retaken the castle in a daring night assault. Fry banners toppled. Littlefinger's eyes sparkled. The Blackfish swims again. Perfect. He sent riders north and summoned Vale Knights southward. Within a fortnight, banners of sun-kissed wings, House Arryn, a charging goat, House Grafton, and the crowned raven, House Corbray, encircled King's Landing. Their discipline contrasted the scraggly crown-loyal camps. Small folk cheered their arrival, bread grew cheaper, thieves vanished, gold cloaks walked straighter. The small council wavered. Grand Maester Pycelle croaked concerns, Kevin Lannister debated reinforcing Casterly Rock. Tommen, frail and impressionable, leaned more each day upon Lord Baelish's gentle tutelage. At twilight, Peter asked Sansa to walk the ramparts. City lights flickered below. "It is nearly time," he said, breath ghosting in chill air. "Cersei plots to spirit the king inside the September tomorrow, hoping sanctuary will shield him. Will we allow it?" "No," his smile was thin as parchment. "But we will allow her to believe it." He outlined a scheme of decoy wagons, secret tunnels, and forged proclamations. At its heart lay a blade of simple logic: power resides where men believe it resides. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "the lords will beg a steady hand. Tommen will abdicate for his safety, or so he will think. And the realm, desperate for unity, will look to the man who saved it from famine, war, and fanatic flames." "And to his queen," Sansa said, meeting his gaze. He brushed a kiss against her brow. "My queen of snow." Dawn carried chaos. Cersei's retinue reached the September of Baelor only to find its gates barred by armored sparrows chanting against incest and tyranny. Rumors erupted. Highgarden armies at the Blackwater, Lannister debts called in bravos, Ironborn longships sighted near the arbor. Through the maelstrom, Littlefinger moved like a dancer, orchestrating confusion, rescuing Tommen from danger and whisking him to Maegor's holdfast under Vale Guard. In the throne room, the small council convened. Sansa stood beside Peter before the Iron Throne. He addressed lords and ladies whose brows glistened with fear. "The realm teeters," he intoned. "The boy king, bless him, desires peace and praise in seclusion. Yet the realm requires leadership, swift, steady, compassionate. I, Peter Baelish, Lord Paramount of the Riverlands and Protector of the Vale, humbly accept the burden of regency until such time as the king attains his majority, or until the High Septon declares his holy intent to join the faith in perpetual service." Gasps. Pycelle sputtered. Kevin's eyes narrowed. But already Lord Harry's went, who owed Peter coin, and Ser Flemont Brax, whose debts vanished under Peter's hand, voiced assent. Soon a chorus followed. In the balconies, commoners cheered. Cersei stormed in, hair disheveled, eyes blazing. "This is treason. You scheming little worm." "I." "Restrain the Queen Dowager," Peter ordered, mild as milk. Gold cloaks hesitated, then obeyed. Her shrieks echoed, drowning beneath the roar of banners unfurling, the mockingbird crowned by a circlet of stark dire wolf and Arryn falcon. Sansa stepped forward, letting the hall gaze upon her, the north in her pale skin, the Riverlands in her hair, the Vale in the turmalines. She spoke, strong and clear. "The north remembers massacre and fire. The Riverlands remember blood and ashes. The Vale remembers its oaths. I pledge these to the realm's salvation, bound in marriage to Lord Baelish. Let any who would break this covenant stand forth." None did. When the sun set, ravens carried word across Westeros. The small council had proclaimed Lord Peter Baelish protector of the realm. Some messages hinted at his coronation, others whispered of Queen Sansa, Lady of Seven Kingdoms. Winter's first snows dusted the Red Keep's ramparts. Sansa stood in a balustrade garden overlooking Blackwater Bay, white flakes melting upon crimson roses. Below, the city's bells tolled, announcing a new coin minted with the Mockingbird's profile, celebrating grain dole expansions, praising a truce with Highgarden sealed by betrothal between Tommen and a Florent cousin. Littlefinger joined her, draping a sable sea cloak over her shoulders. "The north bends the knee," he murmured. "White Harbor's raven arrived. Lord Manderley welcomes the measure of stability." "And the kingdoms?" she asked. "Still fractious as ever." He traced frost crystals on the stone. "Yet every discord is but an opportunity. We have coin enough to hire the Golden Company thrice over. We have ships in Bravos, spies in Dorne, friends in Old Town. Each day our roots deepen." Snowflakes softened his sharp angles, and for a moment he looked almost gentle. "Do you regret?" he asked. Sansa inhaled winter air. She thought of the girl she had been, standing once on a king's road dreaming of lion princes. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who bartered crowns and carved futures. "I regret only the cost of survival," she said. "But I will pay it gladly." Peter smiled, triumphant. Yet in the garden's hush Sansa heard another sound, a distant howling, wolves, or wind, or the long memory of the north. She wrapped the sable tighter, gazing southward where enemy seas churned, then northward where snow fell thicker. The game was not ended, it had merely changed hands. And she, Sansa Stark Baelish, would play it now not as a piece, but as a player. Months passed. Cersei languished in a stone tower, her trial postponed by endless petitions and unfortunate paperwork misplacements. Kevin Lannister succumbed to a sudden chill after meeting with masked priests, rumors of poison, but none dared accuse the man who held the realm together. Marjorie Tyrell, released from custody by a generous donation to the faith, found herself relegated to Highgarden with strict instructions to secure the Reach's harvests. Tommen, tutored by maesters chosen by Littlefinger, studied histories extolling benevolent regencies. In time, the boy grew accustomed to obeying Uncle Peter. Some nights Sansa read to him tales of Bran the Builder, and his eyes lit with wonder. Here was a queen who soothed rather than smothered. Within the small council chamber, Peter presided over maps studded with ivory rods. Sansa attended each session, offering measured counsel. Her suggestions aid for Stormrock Driftmark, new roads linking Gulltown to Maidenpool, orphan apprenticeships in the Guild of Smiths, won hearts faster than swords could. Yet opposition simmered. In the east, rumors fluttered of a silver-haired queen with dragons. In the north, Jon Snow, now king in the north to free men beyond the wall, spoke of sovereignty. In Dorne, Ser Arianne plotted vengeance for the Sand Snakes executed under Cersei's commands. Peter viewed these challenges as pieces to be shifted, bought, or broken. Sansa saw them as storms cresting on distant horizons. She urged caution. "We must rule, not merely win," she told him one candlelit night as they lay among silk sheets. He traced circles on her arm. "To rule is to win anew each day. I will keep you safe." She wondered if safety meant the same as freedom. When the raven arrived from Dragonstone, sealed in black wax, bearing a sigil of three-headed dragon, Peter broke the seal with a smile that was almost hungry. "Queen Daenerys invites us to parley," he announced. "She sails for Blackwater within the fortnight." Sansa felt a thrill of dread rip through her. Dragons, real dragons, and armies unsullied by past oaths. "How will we answer?" "With courtesy," he purred. "Courtesy and contingencies." Preparations unfurled, feasts planned, ballistas readied, bribes to Carthy's captains, a discreet alliance offered to Euron Greyjoy for a blockade. Yet Sansa sensed the board tilting. Dragons cared little for nets or whispers. She rode at dawn to the Godwood, kneeling beneath the carved heart tree transplanted from Winterfell. Red leaves fluttered overhead like embers. She pressed fingers to ancient bark, whispering prayers she once recited beside her mother. "Guide me," she begged. "Let me steer this storm." The wood was silent save the rustle of leaves. Yet rising, she felt some iron in her spine, stark iron, forged in snows long before whispers and courts. Blackwater Bay shone like burnished steel as Daenerys Targaryen's fleet arrived, sails bearing dragons at full roar. City bells clanged, small folk pointed skyward where three great beasts wheeled in lazy circles, wings drumming thunder. Fear rippled through the Red Keep. Gold cloaks fumbled spears, maids crossed themselves. On the day of parley, the throne rooms stood packed with nobles, armor gleaming. Peter wore black velvet slashed with dark green, at his hip a blade of Valyrian steel he named Whisper. Sansa donned a gown of ice blue, her direwolf crown, newly forged, atop braided hair. Doors opened. Daenerys strode beneath archways flanked by unsullied spears, silver gold hair spilling over a charcoal dress, eyes the color of shattered sky. Tyrion Lannister paced beside her. Mismatched eyes flicking across the hall until they met Sansa's. Memories flashed between them. Chains, courtesy, quiet respect. Peter descended 3 steps, bowing. "Your Grace, welcome to King's Landing." Daenerys paused at the foot of the Iron Throne, gaze lingering upon twisted blades. She spoke, voice clear, carrying. "I have come for what was stolen from my family." She studied Sansa. "You are Sansa Stark, once prisoner of my enemy." Sansa stepped forward. "I was prisoner to many, Your Grace. Now I am queen of a realm that yearns for peace." Tyrion raised brows. "Queen? Is King Tommen dethroned?" "He reigns in the Vale," Peter interjected smoothly. "Protected until these troubled times pass." Daenerys's lips tightened. "Children belong with their mothers." "Spoken like one who has borne the weight of youth alone," Peter said, sympathetic. "Rest assured, he is safe." Dragonfire flickered in her amethyst eyes. Safety, she repeated, is an illusion. She turned to Sansa. Do you know what it is to lose everything? Yes, Sansa answered, voice barely above a whisper yet ringing through marble. And to survive. Silence coiled. Courtiers held breath. At last Daenerys spoke. I will not bend the knee to a usurper. Nor we to a conqueror, Peter replied, polite steel. Yet perhaps there is a middle path. He motioned. Guards rolled forward, a chest, lid flung open. Inside glinted polished dragon glass daggers forged in the smithies of Dragonstone at Peter's commission. A gift, he said, to prove good faith. Tyrion whistled low. Daenerys lifted a blade, black as void, edge shimmering. Why offer this? Because winter comes, Peter said. The Night King marches, if rumors be true. Dragons alone may not suffice. But dragon-forged glass in the hands of every knight would cost a fortune, Tyrion noted. Fortune is what I trade, Peter replied. I propose alliance. Your cause gains southern coin and grain, ours gains dragons against northern darkness. When victory is won, we shall call a great council, and the realm shall choose its ruler by consent, not conquest. Gasps rippled. Daenerys studied Sansa, perhaps weighing sincerity. At last she sheathed the dagger. I will consider. Peter bowed. Sansa exhaled. Night blanketed the city. In the solar, Peter poured summer wine. It went well, he said, eyes glittering. Soon she will see alliances to her benefit. Or she will burn us, Sansa murmured, staring at the hearth. Flames crackled, reflecting in the tourmalines at her throat. Dragons answer only to blood. Everything answers to something, he said. Blood, gold, desire. He stroked her hair. Trust me. She looked up. I do, she lied or half-lied. She trusted his ambition. She trusted his love of her idea, his memory of her mother, his hunger for crowns. Trust enough to predict, never enough to surrender. That night she dreamed of snow falling on Dragonstone's black shore, of wolves howling at scaled shadows, of a throne forged anew, steel glowing red as dawn. Weeks ticked onward. Negotiations ebbed and flowed. Sansa hosted Daenerys in the Maiden Vault, showing her the godwood and its heart tree. They spoke of fathers slain, of brothers lost, of childhood stories braided in blood. A fragile understanding bloomed, not friendship but recognition. Littlefinger met with Tyrion over cups of arbor red, bartering lancers for loans just for subtle threat. Varys returned to the capital, whispering of the realm's need. Spiders wove webs within webs. Amidst this, winter reached King's Landing. Snowflakes drifted past spires. Small folk huddled by braziers. Grain stores, thanks to Vale foresight, held firm and bread lines remained orderly. Sansa rode through streets cloaked in white, hearing children chant her name with gratitude. She felt a pang. This city, once her prison, now looked to her as shepherd. But no shepherd stands forever. In the north, ravens screeched of the Night King's breach of the wall. Wildlings fled southward, patrols vanished. Winter was here, true and merciless. Peter convened a war council. Maps sprawled, black chit marks marching south. We must unite all claims, he urged. The north, the Reach, Dorne, the Iron Islands, even Old Town's maesters. He looked to Sansa. Write to your brother, Jon. Offer him equal seat at council. If he kneels, he will not kneel, Sansa said. Nor should he. Eyes narrowed. The Iron Throne cannot abide rival kings. Then perhaps share the throne, she said, surprising herself. A council of equals. End the war of crowns forever. Tyrion sipped wine. A radical notion, though the last coalition of equals ended in dragonfire. Daenerys' expression softened. Yet perhaps this time dragons might prevent, not cause, the fire. Peter masked irritation behind a smile. We will discuss. That night Sansa slipped from the high tower, descending dim corridors to a crypt beneath the Red Keep seldom visited, the resting place of Aegon the Conqueror's sisters, legend said. She knelt between weathered sarcophagi, the air chill, damp earth smell mixing with candle wax. She thought of Ned Stark's words, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. She had become part of another pack now, one of foxes and dragons, mockingbirds and wolves. Could they survive, or would each tear the other in hunger? Soft footfalls. Peter appeared in the gloom, cloak swishing. My love, he whispered. Why hide among ghosts? They listen without judgment, she said. He knelt beside her. You worry for your brother. I understand. But sometimes crowns require sacrifice. They always require sacrifice, she replied. The question is whose? He traced her jaw. Not yours. She met his gaze. In the candle's tremble his face looked both younger and older. Ambition carving hollows, love lighting eyes. She realized then that she held power too, over him. A coil of resolve tightened. I will write to Jon, she said. And to Arya and Bran. We will face this winter together. She stood, dusting her skirts. With or without a throne. Peter rose, expression unreadable. Together, he echoed. Yet in the echo she sensed storm clouds. Ravens flew. In Winterfell, Jon Snow's reply came swift. He would march south, not to kneel, but to fight the dead. He would meet at the Trident, forging an alliance of North and Vale and dragons if honor allowed. Peter studied the letter, lips thin. He means to test me, he muttered. Perhaps to test us, Sansa said. Let him. Preparations grew fevered. For the first time in generations, dragons would head north. A blacksmith's district forged spears of dragoglass, alchemists brewed wildfire should walls fail. Knights from Ashford, White Harbor, and Dread Fort arrived. Banners crowded the Rose Road like a garden of steel flowers. On a frostbright dawn, Sansa rode out with the vanguard, unsullied columns, Vale Knights shining beneath blue skies, northern spearmen in shaggy cloaks. Peter rode beside her, armor lacquered midnight. Behind them, Daenerys soared upon Drogon, casting vast shadows over farmland dusted snow. Small folk knelt as the host passed. At Maidenpool they met Jon Snow. He dismounted amid a hush, black cloak swirling, ghost-white dire wolf at heel. Sansa slid from her palfrey and ran to him, embracing. The court looked on, some touched, others wary. Jon greeted Daenerys with a soldier's nod, Peter with a flat stare. We fight, then speak, he said. So they marched. The riverlands welcomed them, fry banners replaced by waves of silver trout under Ser Brynden Tully. Cold winds sharpened, snow falling thicker. Rumors of dead men walking reached each campfire, freezing hearts more than wind. And behind it all, Littlefinger spun threads. Dispatches to Lords Frey and Hightower, secret councils with mercenary captains, coins to muttering priests. Sansa observed, realized alliances he forged were as easily unmade should they cease to serve him. On the eve of battle at the Trident's icy banks, she sought him in his pavilion. Maps spread, candles guttering. He looked up, weary. Jon's scouts report whites within a day's march, she said. Daenerys will fly at dawn. Peter rubbed temples. Dragons will win the day. Then the realm will hail the ones who brought them. If they do not, Sansa whispered, will you abandon us? His head snapped. Never. But you would abandon Jon. He rose. Jon Snow is a bastard who would undermine my rule. Your rule, she repeated softly. Do you love me, Peter? Or the crown you see upon my head? His face twisted, raw. I love you both, he said hoarsely. But one is impossible without the other. She stepped close, placing a hand on his chest. Then let us win without losing our souls. For a heartbeat he seemed to yield. Yet as she turned to leave, she felt his gaze like a dagger poised. Battle dawned in gray light. The Trident's waters flowed sluggish, half-frozen, banks rimed white. Across the field the dead assembled, an ocean of ragged flesh, eyes blue as glacier hearts. Among them great giants roared, icicle spears clutched in knuckled bone. Jon's host formed ranks, spears set in hedges, dragoglass arrowheads gleaming. Unsullied drums thundered. Then, with a scream that split the sky, dragons descended. Drogon's black wing shadow swept over the Trident, exhaling torrents of flame so hot it melted ice to mist. Regal and Viserion followed, bathing hordes in green and gold conflagration. Whites burned, but a wave of others surged forth, heedless. Sansa watched from a rise, heart hammering. She had foregone armor, clad instead in wolf-trimmed cloak, her presence a beacon for men's resolve. Peter stood near, eyes darting. The clash erupted, steel ringing, screams echoing. Jon fought beside his dire wolf ghost, blade of Valyrian steel carving arcs of blue flame. Tully knights charged, Vale lancers slammed, Dornish archers loosed storms. Yet the dead did not tire. Their numbers seemed endless. High above, Daenerys rode Drogon in sweeping assaults, until a spear of ice, hurled by the Night King, pierced shade and scale. Sharp shatter of crimson scales, a roar, Drogon faltered. Sansa's scream choked. Firestorm curved downward, rider clinging. Peter's hand seized her arm. We must retreat, he urged, eyes wild. Jon fight still, she retorted, wrenching free. Drogon crashed upon the field, earthquaking. Whites swarmed, clawing. Unsullied rushed to defend their queen. Amid the tumult, Littlefinger turned to a mounted courier, barked orders too soft for her to hear. The rider galloped toward the rear lines, toward supply wagons laden with wildfire. Realization speared her. He intends to ignite the field, burn dead and living alike, claim victory by catastrophe. Sansa seized his wrist. Stop. Peter's eyes were frenzy and fear. The realm must survive whatever the price. Not like this, she pleaded. Not with dragonfire upon our own. He hesitated. Below, Jon rallied men around Daenerys, carving a corridor to safety. The Night King mounted an undead wyvern, wings unfurling, frost spiraling from its maw. Sansa looked into Peter's eyes and saw the boy he once was, yearning, powerless, the man he became, calculating, relentless. She kissed him then, soft and fragile, and in that kiss poured grief for all betrayed, hope for all who might live. When she drew back, tear-brightened eyes, she whispered, "Let me save them. Trust me." He trembled, then slowly lifted 2 fingers, signaling the courier to halt. The rider wheeled, wildfire unlit. Sansa turned, descending into chaos. Snow fell thicker, flakes hiss melting on dragon flame. She waded through mud and ash until she found Jon, sword smoking, Daenerys beside him, bloodied but alive. "We must strike the Night King," she gasped. Jon nodded. Daenerys climbed upon wounded Drogon once more. Sansa pressed a dragonglass dagger into Jon's hand, the one Peter gave Daenerys. "End him." Jon mounted a black stallion. Dragons shrieked. Sansa watched as Drogon rose, battered wings lifting. Jon urged horse and ghost into the wake, charging across frozen water. The battle's roar blurred. She saw only him and shadowed death. Above, dragon and wyvern collided in a storm of ice and flame. Dawn pierced cloud as if the heavens split, and in that radiant lance of light, she glimpsed Jon leaping, dagger gleaming, burying it in frosted chest. The world held breath. Then the Night King shattered, fragments of ice cascading. A keening ripple tore through the horde. Whites collapsed, lifeless once more. Silence fell, broken only by crackling embers. The dead lay thick upon the trident. Friend and foe, men and beast. Snow drifted across scorched earth. Survivors wept, knelt, or simply stared at sky. Sansa walked among them, cloak trailing. She found Peter surveying with detached awe. "You spared them," she whispered. He turned. "You saved them," he replied, a strange softness. "You saved me." She closed her eyes. In that hush she felt winter easing, not ending, but no longer unconquerable. Later, camps rose, pyres built. Jon and Daenerys conferred with lords beneath a tattered dragon banner. Sansa entered, snowflakes melting in her hair. Jon looked at her. "Sister." "Queen," Daenerys added, kindly. Sansa met their gazes. "The throne matters less than the realm. Let us call that council. Let the people choose." Tyrion nodded. "A different game, then." Peter stepped from shadows, expression inscrutable. "A game I have spent my life playing. But perhaps," he said slowly, "it is time for new rules." He unfastened the mockingbird clasp, held it out. "Symbols matter. This one has served me. Now let it serve us all." Sansa accepted, closing her fingers around cool silver. She felt its edges bite softly into her palm, reminding her that every banner, every crown, bore weight and blade. Months later, spring buds ventured through melting snow across the crownlands. In the great September, rebuilt from rubble, lords and ladies gathered not for coronation but for council. Benches filled with Starks, Tyrells, Martells, Arryns, Greyjoys, and freefolk chieftains, even maesters held voice. At the center, a circular dais stood empty save 3 chairs, one of pale weirwood, one of black oak, one of shining dragoglass. Sansa entered in simple gray wool, her dire wolf crown absent. Jon followed, cloak of snow-striped fur. Daenerys strode beside them, braids bound with silver rings. The hall fell silent. Sansa spoke first. "Westeros has bent beneath crowns forged by conquest. Today we forge governance by consent. We houses great and small will guide the realm together. No one voice shall rule unchallenged, no one family shall bear alone the river of blood." She glanced at Peter in the wings. His eyes held pride, sadness, and something surrendering. He nodded. The lords murmured, then roared assent. Bells tolled. A new age, perhaps fragile as spring saplings, began. Outside, small folk gathered, unsure what verdict the bells proclaimed. But when Sansa stepped onto the steps flanked by Dragon Queen and Wolf King, they saw not conquerors but stewards. She lifted the mockingbird clasp high and let it fall, a silver bird soaring once then clinking upon marble. A cheer rose, ragged but real. Somewhere, Peter Baelish felt the weight of letting go, and in that weight found a curious lightness. For Sansa Stark, seasons had turned full circle. No longer pawn nor merely queen, she was gardener of war-torn soil, planting seeds of something untried. Whether they would flourish or wither, time alone would decide. But on that dawn, as sunlight streamed through banners of dragon, wolf, and thorn, the realm exhaled, and for a heartbeat, dreamed of peace. And far to the north, beyond shattered wall, a single dire wolf howled, carrying the sound of home across melting snow. The first murmurs of spring coaxed bright petals from the gardens that clung to Maegor's holdfast, but within the red walls of the restored Great September the air still smelled of soot and plaster dust. Sunlight, restored now by vaults of new crystal, spilled across a circular floor of marble where 3 chairs waited like patient ghosts, the pale-veined weirwood seat for the north, the obsidian sweep of dragoglass for the Targaryen host, and the black oak throne that Petyr Baelish had commissioned when the realm first bent beneath his subtle rule. Every dawn, courtiers filed in a river lords smelling of peat, reachmen perfumed with rosewater, Ironborn stiff in salt-caked leather, Dothraki ambassadors wearing their braid rings of bronze. They came to witness the latest experiment in power, a realm steered not by crown alone but by a triune council meant to bind Westeros more tightly than any iron pretender. For a month it worked. Grain caravans from Highgarden met Winterfell's rough-cut lumber on the Rose Road, fishermen from the Shield Islands traded smoke deal for Glover axes, 3-masted cogs laden with Bravosi ink and parchment moored at the King's Gate. The small folk muttered that even the weather seemed in harmony, winds gentle, rains soft, the sort of false spring that made one forget how hard winter might bite again. Overhead, dragons carved lazy spirals, Regal's green mirage above the Blackwater Delta, Drogon's vast ebony shadow over the city's tiled roofs. While ghostly white ravens from the Citadel confirmed what everyone felt in their marrow, winter's worst fury had broken with the Night King's fall, leaving a bruised realm that dared to hope. Amid this bustle, Sansa Stark rose before the second horn of dawn each day. Her chambers overlooked the Godwood courtyard where a transplanted heart tree shook in breezes blown soft with sea salt. She prayed beneath its red leaves, remembering the smell of Northman fires on snow, and then girded herself in the sober elegance that had become her signature, fine gray wool shot through with silver thread, trimmed in sable, a simple torque of engraved iron rather than rubies or pearls. She attended council, received petitioners, wrote letters long into candlelight, soothing quarrels between Florent and Fossaway, brokering a new levy for the lords of the West in exchange for rights to the gold that still winked beneath the hills of Casterly Rock. She found that the language of compromise suited her. She had spoken it in whispers once to please tyrants, now she wielded it like a steel fan to cool rival tempers. But compromise had a cost. Each concession felt like a small stone placed upon her heart. Some nights she lay awake beside Petyr and wondered whether the slow press of pebbles might eventually crush her chest, whether the realm's peace required her to barter away every piece of the girl she had been. Petyr noticed her restlessness and murmured reassurances in the half-light, fingers tracing idle circles upon her arm, promises that she would one day sit a true throne of her own making, that the world would learn to bow to a subtlety sharper than swords. He meant it as comfort, but the words fluttered in her mind like caged sparrows, reminding her that to Petyr, crowns were ends in themselves. She had tasted another kind of power now, the quiet satisfaction of men going to bed with full bellies because roads were repaired and taxes eased. She wanted more of that feeling. She feared how easily it could be lost. The first hairline crack in the peace came from the west. Ser Ferlay Prester arrived in the capital windburned and hollow-eyed, bearing tidings that a host of Sellswords wearing gold lion surcoats had massed near Oxgross. No lord seemed eager to claim them, though their banners mimicked those of the late Tywin Lannister. Rumors whispered of Ser Jaime, presumed lost on the Trident, riding at their head, or of Kevin's bastard sons hungry for lost inheritance. Some named them impostors, up-jumped hedge knights trading on lion pride. Others claimed they were financed by Bravosi bankers owed Lannister debts. Regardless, the message was clear: the West had been leaderless too long, and someone meant to fill that void. When the news reached council, Peter's eyes gleamed behind steepled fingers. "An opportunity," he said, voice silky. "If the West yearns for firm guidance, let us offer it graciously. A marriage, perhaps? One of their bright young scions to wed a maiden of undisputed virtue. House Stark has daughters aplenty in need of husbands." He smiled at Sansa, but she felt only the weight of maneuvering. Jon Snow, seated at her left upon the weirwood chair, bristled. "My sisters are not coin for your purse, Lord Baelish." "Not coin," Petyr countered sweetly, "but keys. Keys that might lock the realm's doors against war." He gestured to Daenerys, arrayed in embroidered midnight and seated tall upon her dragoglass seat. "Her grace understands the value of alliance." Daenerys inclined her head, yet there was caution in her violet gaze. "Alliance must be chosen, not coerced. Let us first determine whether these lions truly seek battle or simply roar for attention." The council agreed to send envoys, Lord Davos Seaworth for impartiality, Ser Brienne of Tarth for honor, and Kono the Dothraki with a troop of outriders for deterrence. They would ride west with a raven's swiftness, their mandate clear: parley, promise mercy, engage intent. Peter acceded with courteous ease, but that evening Sansa overheard him ordering his own agents to shadow the envoys, assess each house's grain silos and armories, note which sons wore new armor and which widows still grieved debts. "Knowledge is ground," he told her when she confronted him, "and we are tillers." Her retort died at her lips, for a page arrived breathless. The Archmaester of Ravens demanded audience, an urgent matter of the citadel. They walked to the rookery perched high on the tower of the hand, where white ravens cooed in alarm. The Archmaester bowed, pressing a scroll sealed with black wax. "Valyria trembles," he said. "Quake split smoking seas, lightning burns red across the sky at dusk. Fishermen speak of dragons stirring in the deep." Daenerys, summoned to the tower, unrolled the parchment. She read in silence, her knuckles whitened. "My blood," she whispered. "My children." Sansa glimpsed sketches, shadows of colossal wings, serpentine shapes coiling through cloud. A chill pricked her skin. Dragons enough to blot the sun were legend, yet so was Winter's army until it screamed at the gates. "Valyria is far," Jon said, though doubt edged his words. "Across seas that shrink beneath sails," Daenerys replied. She looked to Peter. "If the world spawns new monsters, we must brace." Peter smiled, silk over steel. "Then we shall. Fire needs fuel. I have merchants in Volantis who can corner stores of onion pitch and whale oil within a moon's turn." He turned to Sansa. "And the north can supply hardened leather for dragon harnesses." Sansa studied him. "You seem very certain dragons will serve us, not crumble cities." "Everything serves those who master coin and fear," he said. "Or is it love that drives them, Daenerys?" The queen's gaze shuddered. Sansa sensed tension coil between them, two predators marking each other. The council dispersed, everyone hungry for information. Sansa lingered in the rookery. Cold midnight air wafted feathers. She touched a white raven's beak, thinking of omens her father once trusted. In the stillness she realized how precarious their peace had been, built on trust as thin as early ice. She feared cracks widening. Her worry proved keen a week later when Davos Raven returned from the west. The Sellsword host had parted like smoke before the envoys arrived, melting into farmsteads and forests. Villagers swore they saw wagons laden with gold head south toward Old Oak. No sign of Jaime Lannister, but Ser Brienne's final line chilled the room. "We believe a second force, smaller yet better armed, crossed the Red Fork bound east. Their standard was a crimson hand upon gold. House whence sigil once bore a black bat, not a bloody hand." Peter's lips curved. "The Golden Company," he mused. "But why cross the Riverlands? Perhaps to retrieve a prize." Daenerys frowned. "They once fought for my brother's cause. Money erodes loyalty," Peter said. "But vendettas endure. If they march on King's Landing, they misjudge our readiness." "Or test it," Jon noted. "We should meet them before they reach the Crownlands." Thus was born the March of the Green Fork. Jon, Daenerys, and Sansa rode north with 3,000 Northmen, 2,000 Vale Lancers, and 500 Unsullied, leaving Peter to guard the city with gold cloaks whose loyalty jingled in sacks he alone held. They followed the Goldgrass riverbanks where ash still marked pyres from the war against the dead. Villages leaned half-ruined, children stared at the dragons overhead with awe and fear. At Maidenpool's ruins they joined Ser Brynden Tully, who reported the Sellswords camping near Harrenhal, its blackened towers looming like teeth. "They claim no master," the Blackfish said, "but their captains speak Bravosi and bear letters sealed in sunset orange wax." He spat. "Martell color. Dorne metals." Dorne had sat quiet since Cersei's purge, its lords nursing scorpion venom in desert shade. But whisperers said Princess Arianne courted Viserys' phantom memory, promising banners for the true dragon who might avenge Elia Martell's murder. Perhaps she now courted Sellswords instead. Sansa remembered Peter's old adage, "When one hand offers bread, watch the other for daggers." She wrote a letter that night by campfire's sputter, addressing it to Peter, though she knew ravens took days. She warned him to keep the city's gates manned, to watch Dorne's envoys, to trust only those whose purses he held closed. She sealed the parchment with the Mockingbird direwolf sigil, her fingers shaking. 3 mornings later, scouts sighted the Golden Company columns strung like burnished beads along the King's Road's broken spine. Their ranks bristled with pikes tipped in black steel, their elephants, imported at ruinous cost, plodded slow but formidable. Yet the Sellswords seemed in no hurry, their vanguard encamped by the god's eye's misty shore, smoke curling from orderly cook fires. Jon proposed surprise assault at dawn, but Daenerys cautioned patience. Her dragons might scatter them without blood. Sansa listened, studying the horizon where Harrenhal's jagged towers stabbed crimson clouds. Night fell. Wolves howled across reed-choked marsh. Sansa walked the perimeter, ghost padding silent at her side. She found Jon by a willow, sharpening Longclaw as moonlight silvered steel. "Hearts heavy?" she asked. "Always before battle." His smile was wan. "But more for what happens after." Peter's hold on council phrase. "The Lord's whisper you could rule without him." Sansa knelt, brushing frost off a fallen leaf. "Whispers are wind. Peter still holds purses and secrets." "Secrets," Jon said, "are arrows. Eventually they fly." Footsteps approached. Daenerys, hair unbound, face soft with candle glow. She spoke low. "Our scouts captured a Braavosi courier. His satchel carried orders. Delay until dawn on the 7th day, when allies strike the capital." She met Sansa's gaze. Allies funded by coin withdrawn from Lannisport banks 2 moons past. Sansa's breath caught. "Peter," Jon cursed softly. "He means to stage a crisis he alone can resolve. If King's Landing falls to a smaller force, he sweeps to rescue, claiming the people's love anew. Or," Daenerys said, "he lets the city burn, then offers himself as its avenger, rubbled throne ripe for the picking." Sansa felt the pebbles on her heart shift, heavier. "We ride tonight," she said. They returned to camp, rousing commanders. Torches flickered, horns murmured. The host split. One wing under Brynden Tully would harry the Sellswords, feinting retreat while the main force raced south along river tracks seldom used. Daenerys would scout ahead on Drogon, signaling if the city walls already cracked. It was gamble and desperation, but the realm's beating heart lay vulnerable. Before dawn they broke camp. Elephants trumpeted in distant fog as Golden Company pickets discovered decoy fires, shouts echoed hollow in marsh reeds. The North's host thundered away, banners snapping, hooves throwing clods of mud. Sansa rode Windfall, a gray mare gifted by Lady Mormont, cloaked in fur against cutting wind. Ghost loped ahead. Unseen, she sensed other eyes, crows, sparrows, watchers for coins unseen. The ride blurred, ford crossings at moon's mid, arrow clouds against flank from unseen archers, a farmhouse torched by unknown hands. On the 3rd sunset they crested a rise overlooking Blackwater Rush. Smoke spiraled from the city, not in towering columns of siege but scattered plumes, fires in trading wards, riots perhaps. The walls still stood, yet Sansa saw sails on the river, sleek black ships without sigils. Greyjoy. Iron-born longships had slipped past garrisoned shores, perhaps bribing watchers or slicing throats in silence. Now they lurked by the fish market docks, disgorging iron-born reavers. Bells tolled alarm, small folk fled across bridges. Wildfire caches had been moved after Cersei's calamity, but barrels still rested in cellars, iron-born axes hacked doors indiscriminate. Jon cursed. "We must break them before they dig in." He signaled troops forward, horn blasts echoed along ridges. Northmen formed spear wedges, Vale Knights lowered lances. Sansa watched, heart racing, as Daenerys soared overhead on soaring wings of night, Drogon's roar scattering ravens. The sight drew cheers from small folk clustering atop outer walls, hope on wings. Battle erupted by river's mouth. Ironborn shield walls braced but faltered beneath Drogon's flame, ships cracked, tarred ropes scorched. Yet gray waves spilled reavers incessant, their axes struck civilian and soldier alike. Sansa joined battlefield tenders, directing healers, helping drag wounded to carts. Blood soaked her gloves, screams filled air thick with smoke and salt. Hours stretched, noon sun shimmered behind haze. Finally dragons drove the last longship aflame downriver. Jon's cavalry swept quay, scattering survivors. By dusk, the iron-born presence lay broken, yet fires still crackled in market squares. Sansa led men to bucket chains, saving shops of cobblers and bakers whose owners wept thanks. Within the Red Keep's yard, she found chaos. Gold cloaks argued with Vale guards, Peter was nowhere. Lords jostled questioning. Sansa pushed past, scaling the tower stairs 2 at a time. In Peter's private study, she found parchment-strewn reports of fleet movements, ledgers of purchased grain, and a single letter addressed in his slanted hand, "To the one I love." She broke the seal. Words shimmered. "I built a throne of whispers for us, little bird. Yet even whispers grow wings. If you read this, know that I go to ensure our future. The realm must see one last villain, so it may acclaim a savior. When dawn comes, watch the sky. If crows circle, I have failed. If doves, I return crowned. Trust no one, least of all those who preach virtue." It was unsigned. Beneath lay a sigil she recognized only from dusty chronicles, a red dragon biting its own tail on black. The tapestry of conspiracies tangled beyond her sight. Anger surged, tempered by heartbreak. She crumpled the letter, then smoothed it, evidence, truth to show counsel. But counsel scattered. Daenerys still patrolled skies, Jon rallied men to secure gates, Varys whispered of riots in flea bottoms stoked by masked provocateurs promising bread. As lanterns burned low, Sansa stood on a balcony overlooking the Blackwater. Half-burned longships drifted like charred insects. She sensed a change in wind, cooler from south, charged with brine. And in the hush, wings flapped sluggishly. Drogon descending to the courtyard. Daenerys dismounted, face streaked with soot, eyes haunted. "Peter," she said without greeting, "ordered the wildfire moved to granaries months ago. Had Ironborn breached the wrong door?" "Chaos is a ladder," Sansa murmured. "He builds rungs of ashes." Daenerys placed a hand on her shoulder. "Tomorrow we gather the lords." He must answer. Sansa nodded, yet dread coiled. Peter would not return meekly. He would arrive bearing triumph or not at all. The lords convened at dawn in the throne room, crackling hearths warding lingering chill. Jon stood flanked by Northmen, Daenerys by Unsullied. Sansa took no throne but stood between, holding Peter's letter. Murmurs echoed until Grand Maester Orwyle announced Lord Baelish's absence. A hush fell. "Lord Baelish," Sansa began, voice clear, "pursues a stratagem endangering city and realm. We must decide his fate." She read aloud the letter's lines. Gasps rippled. Lord Grafton protested. Baelish's gold fed his docks. Serlin Corbray sneered that conspiracies hid in every corner. Yet others clamored for arrest. Daenerys' eyes blazed. "We find him, or we name him traitor." Dragon flame cleanses treachery. Jon met Sansa's gaze, silent question. She answered with a slight nod. She would not shield Peter from consequences if his ambition burned innocence. They dispatched riders north and south. Varys sent whispers along alley networks. Unsullied combed brothels and banks. But Peter was wind, no trace. 3 days later, a raven from Gulltown, Baelish's banner sighted aboard a galley sailing to Bravos under night fog. Purpose unknown. Daenerys ordered pursuit, her swiftest dromons cut sea, but storms hindered. Sansa stared at harbor mists, imagining Peter on deck, mockingbird pin glinting as he schemed anew in Free City's courts. Council tasked Sansa with interim stewardship of crown finances. Lords accepted with relief, for her ledgers balanced where Peter's dazzled. She dove into accounts, discovering hidden debts, overpaid contracts, a labyrinth of coin that likely lined pockets from Dorne to White Harbor. Unwinding it consumed days, yet each knot unraveled freed grain for children, coin for bridgery. Pears, parchment for scribes. She found purpose. Still, nights gnawed. She dreamed of a mockingbird trapped in ice, pecking furiously until cracks spread across a lake, beautiful and deadly. Summer's first crisp dawn arrived with thunder beyond the walls. Scouts reported sails, Bravosi galleys escorting a single ship flying no banner. Jon, Daenerys, and Sansa rode to the cliffs of Dragonstone's causeway to meet them, Drogon hovering overhead. From the nameless ship descended Peter Baelish draped in austere black, flanked by Bravosi tithe collectors. He knelt before the three rulers. "My queen, my king, my lady," he said, voice hoarse. "I return to pay our debts." He produced scrolls, writs forgiving half the crown's owed sums to the Iron Bank, secured by collateral of mining rights in the Westerlands that his agents had quietly acquired from debt-stricken lords. He claimed to have negotiated grain bargains, shipyard loans, and a treaty ensuring Bravos would police piracy in the Stepstones for a fee. In short, he offered salvation again. Daenerys' expression hardened. "And what price, Lord Baelish?" Peter's eyes flicked to Sansa, raw, searching. "Restore me to council. Let me finish what I began." Jon's hand rose to Longclaw's hill. "You abandoned the city." "Strategic retreat," Peter countered. "To secure its future." Sansa stepped forward. She felt every gaze pivot, dragons, kings, bankers. Her voice trembled not. "The realm requires trust. You spent ours." Peter's face whitened. I spent coin to buy survival. And nearly bought our destruction, she said. She raised the letter. Your own words. He glanced at the Bravosi envoys, then back to her. I wrote that to keep you alert. Fear sharpens. Fear deadens, love, she replied. It numbs souls until they forget why they fight. The wind caught her cloak, snapping like banners. Silence yawned. At length, Varys, emerging from behind soldiers, spoke. The realm knows too well the cost of clever men's intrigues. It thirsts for simpler service. The Unsullied closed ranks. Peter's shoulders sagged. Sansa noticed his right hand trembling, a first fracture in a mask always smooth. Do you cast me out? He asked softly. No, she said. The council will weigh your deeds. You will answer before lords and small folk whose children bled on Quay. Perhaps then mercy finds room. He met her gaze, pain flickering. Mercy, he echoed, voice brittle. You are your father's daughter. She swallowed. And my own woman. She gestured to guards. They bound his wrists with silken rope, symbolic restraint neither rough nor trusting. Bravosi envoys bowed, coin changed hands, debts postponed until verdict rendered. Back in the capital, throngs gathered as Peter was led through streets toward the throne room. Some hissed, the same small folk who cheered breadlines he created. Others wept, having prospered from his schemes. Chaos of opinion mirrored chaos he had fed upon. Inside the sept, lords formed a semicircle. Sansa stood flanked by Jon and Daenerys. She explained charges, negligent defense, clandestine provocation, unauthorized movement of wildfire, potential treason. Peter offered defense, eloquent, weaving justifications, citing precedents of rulers acting without quorum. He argued the Ironborn incursion proved his foresight, the Bravosi Treaty, his indispensability. Some lords nodded charmed. Then witnesses spoke, cobblers whose children died from stray axes, captains who watched wildfires shift unguarded, maesters whose ravens Peter diverted to hide supply shortfalls. Their stories eroded nods into frowns. Finally, Sansa addressed assembly. Lord Baelish taught me that every act is a wager, she said. He wagered our lives without consent. That debt cannot be repaid in coin. She looked at Peter, tears shone unshed. I loved the man he could have been. The vote was taken. By majority, Peter Baelish was stripped of titles and offices. Half favored exile to Bravos, half execution. The tie fell to the Triune Council. Jon, whose honor balked at blood, inclined toward exile. Daenerys, shaped by fire and betrayal, leaned to death. The deciding voice was Sansa's. She stood beside Peter in the soft light of crystal windows. Memories crashed, airy balconies, moonlight on Tourmalins, the first taste of power he offered. She spoke barely above whisper, yet the hall held breath. Peter Baelish, she said, you once told me love is a lie men craft to claim desire. I learned you lied poorly, for desire is love starved of trust. The realm cannot be nourished on such famine. She closed her eyes, inhaled. I choose exile. Let Bravos house you and judge your further plots. Set foot on Westeros again, and the sentence is death. A murmur rose, relief, complaint, acceptance. Peter's head bowed. Guards escorted him. As he passed Sansa he paused, whispering, even caged mockingbirds remember songs. Then he was gone. That night, Sansa climbed the same balcony where years ago she dreamt of Joffrey's songs. The wind tasted of sea and jasmine. Jon joined her, bearing 2 cups of mulled wine. You spared him, he said quietly. I spared myself, she answered. Killing him would leave rot in me. Jon nodded, chiseling smile lines rare for him. The council meets tomorrow to seat permanent stewards. The lords look to you. She sighed. Power again. Responsibility, he corrected. The realm owes you hope. In the dark, dragonfire flickered somewhere distant, Daenerys training regal above fields so scorched weeds refused growth. Sansa gazed south where stars dipped toward dawn, north where aurora tinged horizon green. We will rebuild roads, she said, half to herself, linking castles and villages alike. We will teach maesters to read to small folk, not only lords. We will mend. Jon clinked his cup to hers. Mending suits Starks better than thrones. She sipped, warmth sliding down. Yet someone must sit them. Then sit, but do not chain yourself, he said. Thrones are seats, not cages. She smiled wryly. And you? King in the north yet bound to counsel. I will ride north at spring's height, he replied. But the wall is rubble, the night's watch needs guiding. I will shuttle, perhaps, until the realm no longer needs kings. A fanciful dream, she thought, yet one worth pursuit. Dawn painted sky rose and gold. Bells tolled not for war or coronation, but for market day. Sansa descended to the courtyard where small folk stood in lines awaiting bread ration, albeit shorter now. She walked among them, cloak brushing dirt. Children stared. She knelt, gifting a wooden dire wolf to a shy girl. The mother wept thanks. Sansa felt no crown but the weight of their gaze, a gentler, heavier burden. Later, in council chamber, she accepted appointment as Mistress of Coin and First Steward, a title new forged. She insisted on audits, local assemblies, and a charter granting guilds voice in governance. Lords grumbled, but Daenerys backed her. Jon affirmed, trade men cheered. Days turned to weeks, roads filled with caravans, braziers lit for nighttime travelers, taxes lowered for poor harvest valleys. Not all smiled. Dorne bristled at Braavosi bias, the Reach fretted about grain prices, the Faith militant questioned Triune rule lacking anointed sanction. But Sansa faced each challenge with steady quill and calmer heart, learning from Peter's cunning yet tempering intrigue with transparency. She refused jewels beyond a single tourmaline set rewrought into a brooch shaped like dire wolf and mockingbird entwined, a reminder of roads chosen and not. Letters arrived from Bravos, anonymous, filled with riddles, some praising reforms, others warning of debts deeper than oceans. She read each, filed them. When rumors placed Peter trading spice in Karth, she felt mingled relief and sorrow. Some nights she heard mockingbird song in dreams. Seasons passed. The White Knife thawed, ships from Skagos brought obsidian for new watchtowers along the once wall. Maester chain forging reopened at Winterfell to train scholars from small folk lineages. Dragons nested on Dragonstone cliffs, guarding coasts from raiders. The realm still fought bandits, plague, drought, but now did so unified enough that no single spark engulfed all. On the first anniversary of the Trident victory, a feast crowded the square before the September lanterns drifted skyward, minstrels sang of wolves and dragons dancing. Sansa watched from a balcony, Jon at her side, Daenerys on the other. They shared quiet contentment as laughter echoed. Daenerys raised a goblet. To tomorrow, she toasted. Jon echoed, to hope. Sansa lifted hers last. To lessons hard won. They drank. Below, small folk danced in swirling circles lit by fireflies. Sansa saw a little boy wearing a wooden crown chase a girl who brandished carved talons as dragon claws. They shrieked joy. That sight, more than banners or torches, told her the realm's pulse beat strong. She felt again the pebbles on her heart, but now many had worn smooth, shifted apart, leaving space to breathe. There would always be new stones, such was rule. Yet she was no longer alone to bear them. The pack survived, larger than blood, spanning crowns and cottages alike. As midnight bells chimed, she breathed deep of jasmine air, closed her eyes, and whispered thanks to the old gods, the new, and to those gone who shaped her path, father lost to honor, mother to war, sisters scattered yet striving. And a mockingbird who taught her the cost of flight. In distant Bravos, perhaps Peter Baelish stood on a moonlit balcony of his own, counting ships and futures. Maybe he raised a glass toward ghost winds, toasting the only woman he ever loved in whatever twisted measure love meant to him. Maybe he whispered a vow to return. If he did, Sansa Stark would be ready. She had learned to map words and glances for hidden daggers, but also to plant gardens in their wake. Summer would come, winter again, and countless dawns after. In each, she would walk the line between steel and mercy, guiding a kingdom that once devoured innocence but might yet nurture it. Below, laughter spooled into star-specked dark, and for the first time in many years Sansa allowed herself to laugh too, soft, genuine, unafraid of echoes. The sound mingled with flutes, with dragon wing beats far off, with the muffled roar of surf against Blackwater cliffs. A song not of grief or ambition, but of endurance. The night held it close, and the winds carried it north, south, east, and west. Across fields where new grain sprouted, over river fords mended, through valleys where storytellers would one day speak of the Queen of the Quiet Knife, who carved peace from chaos and wove crowns of ivy instead of iron. And somewhere, a lone dire wolf howled beneath a full moon, its voice no longer mourning but heralding something daring and fragile, a realm learning to live. Spring's gentle promise could never wholly hush the hungers that stalked the Seven Kingdoms. Though market stalls and King's Landing brimmed again with figs from Dorne and salt cod from the arbor, beneath the chatter of haggling voices the city still thrummed with stories of monsters, Valyrian shadows stirring across the sea. Sellswords regrouping under half-forgotten banners, whispers that Peter Baelish would return at the prow of a Braavosi war galley to reclaim the crown he had been denied. Each rumor birthed another until gossip tangled the capital's streets like ivy on broken stone. Sansa Stark felt those rumors before she heard them, a faint tension that seeped into parchment edges and the shrug of a chamberlain's shoulders. She had become mistress of quiet tremors, attuned to the way a baker's laughter shifted when grain prices rose or how a dockhand's whistle fell flat when sailors spoke of storms. Late into candlelit nights she traced those tremors across vellum maps, marking where tidings converged in ominous knots. Across the narrow sea, a city of twisted basalt spires named Nassaria had begun emptying its slave quarries. Ships once freighted with stone now carried men who fought without banners or nation, paid in dragonglass and promise. They called themselves the Broken Sigil, renouncing every house that had claimed them. Their emblem, an Ouroboros dragon gnawing its own tail, echoed the signet Peter left upon his letter. Sansa showed the dossier to Daenerys in the Dragonstone Solar where sea winds lashed shutters. They mined dragonglass, Sansa said. Not merely weapons for the dead, but for something else. Daenerys traced the inked Ouroboros. This mark once belonged to a sect of Valyrian pyromancers, she mused, voice low. They believed fire a living god that devours itself to be reborn. My ancestors outlawed them. She folded the parchment. If someone revives that cult, they will come for dragons. Why send sellswords instead of envoys? Sansa asked. Because men who worship fire need no diplomacy, the queen answered. They need only fuel. They agreed to tighten patrols along Blackwater Bay. Jon Snow dispatched Night's Watch Rangers south, pairing wildling scouts with Vale Falcons to spot sails before they breached shoals. Yet days slipped past with no invasion, only iron-coated rumors that rattled shutters at dusk. In the lull, Sansa pressed onward with rebuilding. She traveled the King's Road flanked by a modest guard of tall Heart archers and Dothraki outriders who took to Westeros' grassy heartland with wary curiosity. In Ashford she adjudicated a dispute between charters of cider merchants and a new guild of vintners. In Bitterbridge she mediated peace between Lady Lyanna Fossaway's scions and peasants whose orchards bled taxes. Everywhere she went, smallfolk gathered at dusk to watch the queen who wore no crown sing lullabies over ledger pages. Tales spread faster than plague. The Iron Rose, they called her in the Reach, the bloom with thorns of steel. But all summers court their own storms. In the Dornish marches, raiders began torching caravans bound for the capital. They bore no sigils, yet survivors described dark cloaks trimmed in gold thread. Dorne's Prince Corin Martell disavowed them, swearing they were neither sand nor spear in his command. Still the attacks came, swift, surgical, targeting wagons laden with glass and brass shipped from Old Town's Alchemists' Guild. Daenerys sent unsullied detachments to escort transport convoys, while Sansa rerouted shipments along sea lanes defended by Dragonstone's fleet. Yet the pattern troubled her. Whoever struck seemed to know every cargo's itinerary. In small council one humid afternoon, widowed by thunderclouds pressing against stained-glass windows, she shared her suspicion. Peter's informants once fed him every roster of mules leaving Casterly Rock. He could still draw upon those webs. Jon frowned, arms folded over a black tunic embroidered with lone white direwolf. Rats cut tails when cornered, he said. Some of his whisperers may serve new masters now. Whispers do not change masters, countered Tyrion Lannister, returned to his duties as Hand after months overseeing irrigation repairs in the Reach. They change price. Offer more coin and the rats squeal for you. He tipped wine. But coin alone cannot buy maps of royal convoys that diverted only the night before. Daenerys studied Tyrion. You think we harbor a leak. I think we harbor many, he replied. Every hall has ears. Some are shaped like roses, some like dragons, some like mockingbirds. They resolved to set a snare. A decoy convoy of empty wagons, heavily guarded, declared to carry wildfire salts from the Alchemists' Guild to Dragonstone. Sansa wrote the manifest herself, ensuring only Privy Council knew it. The parade of wagons rattled through Stormland's ravines 2 days later. Just before dawn, scouts signaled raiders approaching from the north. So precise they bypassed trailing pickets to strike center wagons. Tall Heart archers sprung the trap, volleying flaming arrows. Unsullied lines closed from both flanks. Dothraki riders thundered down gullies, rocks flashing. Battle was brief. Half the raiders fled, half fell. One was captured alive. Under flickering torchlight in a makeshift stockade, Sansa and Jon questioned him. The prisoner spoke Westerosi with Tyroshi lilt. His cloak bore the Ouroboros pin. Gold coins sewn into his hem bore mint marks of bravos. Yet he refused name or employer. Jon threatened trial by combat. The Sellsword laughed and bit through his own tongue, choking on blood before Sansa could stop him. That night Sansa dreamed. She stood upon a balcony above a sea of flame where shrieking dragons circled. From below, a mockingbird emerged, feathers scorched, but in its beak dangled a crown melted to unrecognizable slag. She woke before dawn and rode to Bran Stark at Winterfell, begging for guidance beyond mortal eyes. Ravens flew northward through storms of gulls. Days later Bran's reply arrived, penned in spidery scrawl, "Beware the coin that carries memory. Some debts are paid in blood, some in fire. Look to the place where ghosts walk at noon." Cryptic as prophecy, yet she deciphered one meaning: Harrenhal, where midday light still seemed haunted by ash shadows. She proposed a council meeting there. Publicly to inspect fortress repairs, privately to draw out hidden watchers. Daenerys agreed, eager to test Rhaegal's endurance on inland flights. Jon acquiesced despite misgivings. Tyrion orchestrated logistics. Davos captained grain barges up the Trident to supply the tour. By first moonrise of summer, a procession departed King's Landing. Northmen bannermen on shaggy horses, Dornish outriders from Sunspear uneasy among green fields. Queen's Guard knights resplendent in silvered plate bearing the triune sigil of direwolf, dragon, and rose. Sansa rode near the front, her gray cloak stitched with small emerald leaves. Winterfell memories budding new life. Jon rode at her side. Daenerys soared overhead, Rhaegal's tail carving eddies through clouds. The Riverlands welcomed them with cautious hospitality. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully, freed from Lannister captivity during the Night King crisis, hosted a river banquet where minstrels softened hearts with ballads of Nymeria, the Queen Wolf, and Rhaenys Targaryen's tour of conquest. In those songs Sansa heard echoes of her own journey. A woman forging path through ruin, flanked by Dragonfire and Northron grit. Harrenhal loomed 3 days later, its melted towers black against thunder sky, each stone still bleeding stories of wildfire and dragonflame centuries cold. Jon dismounted first at the echoing gatehouse where weeds clutched iron portcullis teeth. When Sansa stepped beneath those archways, she felt the weight of history drape her shoulders heavier than fur. They convened council in the Hall of the 100 Hearths, a cavernous ruin where only 2 hearths yet stood intact. Fires crackled, casting long ghosts on walls. Exterior storms drummed on broken slate roofs. Daenerys stood at the head of a long trestle table salvaged from storage vaults. Beside her, Jon. Sansa took seat at center, between North and Fire, parchment arrayed like playing cards. Lords Aeron, Tarth, Royce, Martell, and Tyrell attended. Even Gendry Baratheon arrived from Storm's End, his new lordship stamped on hesitant bearing. Only the Westerlands lacked a voice. Goldmines still wrestled over petty claimants. Tyrion opened with logistics, Davos with grain ledgers. Sansa announced new tariffs to fund bridge repair across the Mander. The sun crept across cloud-cracked skylights. Bran's letter warned, ghosts walked at noon. Echoes of Aegon's conquest and doomed Heron's screams rippled in half-heard murmurs when wind whistled through slag-pierced walls. Mid-discussion, a tremor shivered flagstones. Dust sifted from vault arch. An unsullied runner burst in, saluting. "My queens, my lords," Skyfire to the east. They stepped into courtyard. Across distant horizon, a pillar of smoke mushroomed above the God's Eye Lake, lit from within by flickers of green, wildfire. Jon swore. Daenerys leapt onto Rhaegal, wings beating thunder. Sansa ordered mounted scouts. Within an hour they reached the lakeshore. A fishing hamlet smoldered, houses reduced to glassy slag. Bodies floated where water steamed. At edge of Ashendock, a sigil carved in scorched wood, Ouroboros dragon. Daenerys circled above, scanning for attackers. None remained. Only drifting embers and a smell like burning pine tar. Sansa knelt, lifting a shard of fused wood, amberglass glinting. She remembered Blackwater Bay the night of wildfire. This blast burned hotter, as if stoked by spells. Tyrion joined, expression grim. Someone refined the formula. That evening back in Harrenhal, they pored over captured equipment, clay pots etched with Valyrian glyphs, igniter cords laced with strands of pale green metal resembling frozen fire. Alchemists summoned from King's Landing examined, pronouncing it more volatile than wildfire, triggered by blood heat. One dropped a crumb onto brazier embers, flash of blinding emerald lit the hall, singeing eyebrows. Panic rippled until flame died. The discovery shook council unity. Dornish envoys accused Lannister remnants, Reachmen eyed Dornish neighbors with mistrust. Sansa intervened, voice calm but resonant. Division serves our enemy. They hide in rifts we widen. We must weave tighter. She proposed a joint task force, alchemists, maesters, and pyromancers supervised by 3 appointed lords, to study the compound and devise countermeasures. Council agreed, though unease lingered. Night settled heavy. Sansa walked Harrenhal's ruined godwood, ghost of Weirwood long cut glimmering in moonlight memory. She spoke a prayer to old gods, keep the realm whole. A rustle of leaves stirred though no wind blew. She sensed presence behind, turned to find Ser Jorah Mormont, recently Knight Commander under Queen Daenerys, waiting with parchment. A raven from Braavos, he said, voice grave. She broke the seal, mockingbird wax. Only one line within, the coin is cast. Below, coordinates etched in Braavosi cipher, a location off Cracklaw Point. She saw Tyrion, Jon, Daenerys at once. They met in torchlit alcove. Peter summons me, she said. Jon growled suspicion. Daenerys considered. He wants audience on neutral shore, perhaps to trade knowledge. Tyrion tapped quill on lip. Or to lure us to explosive demise. Sansa exhaled. Yet ignoring may cost more. He may hold key to this fire. Jon volunteered to accompany, but Sansa insisted he remain to guard counsel. Daenerys could not risk dragon in narrow marsh where traps awaited. Thus at dawn Sansa rode south with a small retinue. Ser Jorah, Arya Stark, summoned earlier from Braavos where she trained under the Faceless Men, and Prince Gendry whose shipwright expertise could gauge coastal hazards. Arya greeted sister with wolfish grin, wearing plain leathers and a blade of Valyrian steel at hip. Time to clip mockingbird wings, she said. They sailed from Maidenpool aboard a sloop swift as rumor, hugging craggy coastline until dusk bled crimson. At specified cove they anchored. Moon hung low, water flat as obsidian. A single lantern flickered on shingle beach where a slender figure waited. Sansa stepped ashore first, heart drumming. Peter Baelish emerged from shadow, garbed in charcoal cloak embroidered with faint silver thread. His beard trimmed, eyes bright with familiar mischief. He bowed. My lady. I feared you would not come. She kept distance. I came for peace. Peace, he echoed, tasting word. A rare spice. He gestured to rock bench. She shook head. Speak. He clasped hands. The Ouroboros Brotherhood, you've met their flames. They court me, believe I share their zeal. I do not. Their leaders seek to birth a weapon, dragonfire trapped in stone, detonated by breath. A dozen barrels lie aboard galleys bound for King's Landing. I wish them stopped. Arya stepped forward, face shadowed. And why help us? Peter smiled sadly. Because I build a realm of silk webs, not smoldering bones. If they burn King's Landing, what remains for me? He drew scroll, offered to Sansa. Here, manifest and sail routes. Galleys depart on Morrow's tide. Sansa accepted, scanning Braavosi script listing 3 ships: Black Manticore, Widow's Kiss, Maiden's Doom, laden with emerald glass amphory. Gendry muttered curse. Each amphora could level a gatehouse. Peter nodded. They mean to firestorm the harbor, then claim Ash and Dragon's name. Chaos for them to ascend. Jorah asked, why not alert Brotherhood of your betrayal? Peter's grin turned wry. I may have misled them to believe a greater prize lies north, dragons unguarded. Arya's eyes narrowed. You led them to Regal. He shrugged. Misplaced hope cuts sharp. Regal will not be in that sky tomorrow, will he? Sansa realized he gambled again, but this time leveraging inside knowledge. She folded manifest. What price? He touched heart. One promise, when dust settles, allow me to return, not to power, merely to live in Westeros beneath a modest roof. Arya snorted. A modest brothel roof, perhaps? Peter's gaze flicked to her, lips twitching. Even brothels need efficient ledgers. He turned back to Sansa. I saved your life once, save mine now. Sansa recalled the Ares' moonlit balcony, his hand brushing her cheek. She weighed trust's shattered shards. At last she spoke. I cannot promise pardon. But if your manifest saves city, I will urge council to commute exile to house arrest at Maidenpool under guard. He dipped head. A hollow cage still beats burial. I accept. Wind-whipped cloak, he stepped back. Hurry. Tide rises. He vanished among dunes. Arya traced after but found only gull prints. Back aboard ship, Gendry charted intercept. Their sloop too small to engage war galleys, they needed Dragonstone fleet. Ravens flew, Dawn saw them racing north under full sail. Off Windwater estuary they met Queen's Fury, Daenerys' flagship with Regal circling overhead. Sansa relayed manifest. Daenerys' eyes flamed. We intercept or incinerate, she vowed. Naval chests unfolded across storm-rough seas. At midday lookouts sighted Widow's Kiss. Dragonstone's galleys formed crescent, catapults loaded with chain shot. Widow's Kiss tried to veer but wind betrayed. Regal swooped, breath of torrent flame igniting deck where amphory glowed sickly green. An explosion rocked waters, spray of molten emerald hissing. Black Manticore attempted escape, but Gendry's ballistae pierced hull, unsullied boarding party doused fuses. Maiden's Doom scuttled self near shoals, its crew fleeing on skiffs only to be lassoed by Dothraki riders along shore. Amphory seized intact revealed alchemical runes unlike known formulas. Maesters studied for weeks before crafting neutralizing sand. Disaster averted, yet Brotherhood cells still lurked. In council, proof of Peter's manifest forced reevaluation. Some lords hailed him reluctant savior, others decried manipulators staging threat to barter freedom. The compromise mirrored Sansa's pledge, indefinite house arrest in Maidenpool under joint Stark-Arryn custody, allowed to manage port tariffs but barred from politics. Jon remained skeptical yet trusted sister's judgment. She visited Peter once, months later. A modest stone manse overlooked Foggy Bay where gulls wheeled. He greeted her at threshold, thinner, gray-streaking hair. In study, he showed ledgers of harbor tolls improving, profits funding orphan asylums. She noted contrition in careful columns. Over tea he asked of realm, she spoke of roads paved, dragon eggs rumored in Valyrian ruins, Arya exploring old town archives for cures to wildfire plague. When she rose to leave, he stepped aside, no attempt at touch. Outside, early snowflakes drifted. He called softly Sansa. She turned. I once chased crowns because I believed power could mend the boy spurned at Riverrun's gate. I was wrong. Power mends nothing, only people do. She answered, people break too. He bowed head. Then menders must outnumber breakers. She offered faint smile, walked into snow. Years unfolded, seasons cycling. Brotherhood remnants dwindled, hunted by blended patrols of Northmen, Dornish, and Unsullied. Dragons nested and hatched, but under Daenerys' decree none flew warpaths again. Instead they patrolled horizons against slavers and pirates, a living firewall beyond politics. Sansa's council codified the Charter of the Seven, granting each region delegate votes in realm decisions. Elections replaced hereditary seats in half the small council, guilds gained representation. Some nobles balked, but harvest surpluses and reduced levies tempered dissent. When Great Spring famine struck Essos, Westerosi grain ships sailed east, forging goodwill unseen since Age of Heroes. On 10th anniversary of Winter's End, banners of dire wolf and dragon fluttered side by side above King's Landing Citadel. The rebuilt Red Keep gardens bloomed with pale blue winter roses and crimson fire lilies. Sansa walked paths with Jon and Daenerys as children chased dragon hatchlings under watchful keepers. Bells tolled midday, ghosts of Harrenhal no longer haunted, they had followed noonlight into memory. Jon paused near fountain carved of weirwood and obsidian intertwined. Bran sends word, he told them. Green Dream shows seas for 40 years. Daenerys laughed softly. Dreams can lie. Sansa touched water's surface, ripples dancing. Dreams can guide. She looked toward the horizon where sun-gilded harbor masts recalling a mockingbird caged in snow. Somewhere in Maidenpool, Peter Baelish might be counting coins or perhaps teaching orphans sums. She did not know, but she knew the realm endured because wolves, dragons, lions, roses, sparrows, even mockingbirds now nested in the same vast woodland, singing wary harmony. That harmony would falter, renew, falter again, for peace is a song that requires every voice. Sansa Stark, once a silent bird, had become its chief cantor, weaving melodies from steel and mercy. As evening painted sky mauve, she closed her eyes and listened. Ships' horns bellow, smith hammers ring, children laugh, dragons rumble distant thunder. All joined in rough, imperfect chorus of a kingdom that had learned, at last, to outsing chaos. She smiled, and the song rose higher, echoing across valleys green and snowy, across dunes and islands, across stone keeps and humble huts, until even the ghosts stilled to hear it, reminded that though crowns may melt and empires fall, hope, once kindled, burns with a fire no alchemist can bottle. Summer's warm sigh lingered upon the riverlands long after the first harvest scythes had bitten barley and rye, and for a brief shining season the realm felt as though it breathed in unison. Wells filled, grain stores swelled, children played in lanes once haunted by corpses and iron. Caravans ferried Dornish wine to White Harbor and northern furs to the arbor. Laughter and commerce mingled like the scent of fresh bread in market squares. Yet beneath the placid surface, currents still shifted, deep and inscrutable as ever they had in Westeros, and Sansa Stark kept her ears to those unseen tides. She felt them now while standing upon the ramparts of Maidenpool's seaward wall, a salt-tanged breeze toying with the wolf and ivy ribbons at her collar. Beneath her, fishing skiffs bobbed in a sheltered roadstead. Beyond, the restless bay of crabs glittered violet under a dawning sky. The bells of St. Jerome's Lane tolled sex, though dawn's red crest had scarce slipped the horizon, an omen, some would have said, that time itself hurried to keep pace with change. Sansa folded gloved hands upon weather-worn crenellation and considered the letter that still pricked at her thoughts like a thorn caught in wool. It had come 3 days past from Braavos, a simple scrap of doeskin parchment bearing no seal but marked in an unmistakable narrow hand. The fire has many mouths, and one of them has learned to speak ice. Seek the forge that glows beneath the silver bank, or the wolves will howl in vain. A friend of the crown. She knew few in Braavos bold enough to pen riddles rather than invoices. Arya was one, but Arya would have signed with a wolf's scratch or not at all. The handwriting was not Peter's either, his was slanted, sly. This script strode across the page in sure strokes, like a swordmaster's flourish. Sansa suspected an agent of the Iron Bank, perhaps someone alarmed by what they themselves had financed. She had shown the missive to Tyrion and Daenerys on the Isle of Faces, and they had agreed. The forge beneath the silver bank spoke not of coin but of some hidden workshop within Braavos itself. Thus, a decision loomed, one that could not be tabled at small council alone. Sansa intended a discreet embassy to the Free City, but first she must unpick a snarl of alliances, duties, and dangers. She lingered on the wall until the gulls' squabbling calls softened to lazy croaks, then descended stone steps to the manor that served as Peter Baelish's gilded cage. Inside the modest receiving hall, sun slats cut through latticed shutters, striping a parquet floor of dark oak. Peter sat at a trestle-armed desk, quill scratching over ledger columns. He looked up as her boots whispered across rushes, offering the half-smile that once disarmed courtiers in the Red Keep. "Good morrow, my lady." His voice remained velvet, but his edges had dulled, hair-flecked silver, eyes fanned with thin lines of sleeplessness. The tariffs from Gull Town arrived with the dawn tide, profitable. "I did not come to discuss tariffs," she said, stopping short of his reach. "I need names. Braavosi miners hired to smelt dragaglass in secret. I need routes that bypass customs. I need passwords murmured in canals at midnight." Peter's quill hovered mid-stroke. "Ah, the forge beneath the silver bank. You know it then." "I know whispers. A guild of alchemists fled Valyria after the Doom, some settled Old Town, some Cohor. The boldest went farther north to Braavos, forming a clandestine circle within the Iron Bank's shadow vaults. They seek to bind fire and ice. If rumor be true, they melt obsidian in seawater crucibles and temper it with naphtha and frozen brine. The result is a glass that fractures into shards colder than the wall yet burns like wildfire. Sansa felt chill prickles up her arms. "And they intend to sell this to the Ouroboros Brotherhood." Peter steepled his fingers. "Or to rivals yet unseen. Braavos will fund anything that promises dividends, provided risk sits on foreign shores." She paced a slow circle, skirts whispering. "You've traded favors for your freedom until now. Trade this last one, and when winter snows return maybe I will let you breathe northern air once more." He inclined his head. "Send a courier to the House of Black and White. Request an audience with the kindly man, offer him the coin of Braavos, Valamorgulus, Valadohiris. Tell him the crown seeks to balance a debt of death. He will open doors that gold cannot. Because you once purchased his silence? Because I repaid a debt of my own," Peter murmured, eyes clouding with memory. "Trust me or don't, but time thins." She left without farewell. Outside, Arya leaned against an ivy-choked pillar, face dappled by light. She had traveled from Old Town to be near Peter's manse, guarding, perhaps, or merely watching. Sansa handed her the secret, Braavos. House of Black and White. Arya's wolfish grin widened. "I know its shadows. Will you go with me? Try and leave without me." Arya straightened. "And if Peter's words prove crooked, I'll straighten them with needle." Days later, a sleek Braavosi cog named Sea Silk cut across a blood-orange sunrise, bearing Sansa, Arya, Tyrion, and a handful of trusted Northmen disguised as merchants. They hugged the coast past Duskendale, turned east at Dragonstone's headlands where Regal Sword Sentinel, then ventured into open narrow sea swells. Sails filled with briny wind, gulls dwindled, nights broadened into endless star fields mirrored on black water. Tyrion spent evenings on deck recounting his first voyage here decades earlier when he still believed Casterly Rock's gold weighed more than wisdom. "Braavos is half mask, half mirror," he mused. "Whatever you seek, you'll find a reflection brighter and darker than truth." Arya listened but spoke little, eyes ever scanning horizons as though searching for phantoms only she could sense. Sansa studied tide and constellations, mindful that every league steered them deeper into intrigues where gold and steel mattered less than fluid loyalties. On the seventh night, the Titan's colossal fire beacon appeared on the horizon, its bronze visage burning above a sea haze. By dawn the sea silk glided beneath thunderous stone legs, oars withdrawn, sailors' hats doffed in silent salute. Beyond, the lagoon city unfurled, domed palazzi of pink marble, rickety wooden tenements stacked like children's blocks, canals crisscrossed by humpbacked bridges and bright pennants. Over it all loomed the austere granite bastion of the Iron Bank, no banners, no colors save the faintest green from oxidized copper shutters. They birthed at the quiet quay. Disguises were shed within the privacy of a hired villa, northern cloaks replaced merchant robes. Sansa pinned a simple dire wolf brooch to her mantle, Arya bound her hair in a single braid, blade hidden at spine. Tyrion donned a sober indigo doublet embroidered only with a small hand sigil. Their first destination was not the Iron Bank but a nameless wine shop tucked beneath the colonnade of ivy-laden arches. There, at noon, they met Jalabar Mo, a Saffron Straits smuggler indebted to Tyrion. Over spiced pears and orange flower wine, he delivered grim tidings. Galleys flying neither Triarch nor Bank colors had docked at the secret piers, disgorging crates identical to those Widow's Kiss once carried. Harbor scribe chatter named the recipient the Sons of Salazar, a merchant house that did not exist a moon ago. Empty foundation built overnight, Tyrion muttered, swirling cup. Coin paved the permits. Arya tapped dagger's pommel. Permits can't stop a blade. Perhaps, Sansa said, but the Braavosi value contracts above blood. We will need ink first, steel after. They split. Tyrion and Jalabar departed to bribe harbor clerks for manifests. Arya drifted into canal shadows to trail stevedores. Sansa alone approached the Iron Bank's monolithic frontage, her boots echoing upon obsidian steps polished by centuries of supplicants. Inside, vaulted halls dwarfed cathedral naves. Bank officials in austere blue robes glided over mosaics depicting shattered chains and merchant fleets. Sansa presented a token of polished jade, Peter's final coin from his days brokering loans for the throne. Wordless ushers escorted her through echoing corridors into a modest domed office walled with ledgers. There awaited a gaunt man of indeterminate years, skin like vellum, eyes gray as wet slate. The kindly man's mask was gone, this visage bore no disguise. He motioned to a single wooden chair opposite a low table. I am told you carry a debt of death, he said in a voice paper-thin yet resonant. Sansa met his gaze. I seek knowledge that may prevent thousands of deaths. Life and death weigh the same to the many-faced god, he intoned. Only balance matters. Then consider the scales, she replied. Braavos profits when Westeros is stable. Chaos disrupts markets, fails loans. A faint twitch of his mouth might have been amusement. Speak your request. Who funds the Erebaros Brotherhood's alchemists? Where's the forge they guard? He tipped his head. Names are expensive. Are you prepared to pay? With coin, yes. With blood, if necessary. But if fire consumes Westeros, Braavos loses a customer, a debtor, a partner. Silence deepened, dust motes drifted like snow in sun shafts. Finally he reached into a cedar box, withdrew a thin copper rod etched with Braavosi script. This is a pass key to the undervault of Copperside. Present it to the custodian at third bell past sunset. There you will find ledgers of the Sons of Salazar. Learn what you will. She accepted. Why help me? We are the god's servants, not his masters, he whispered. Balance requires adjustment. He rose, hand a fleshless bird. But know this, taking knowledge is its own transaction. The god will respect payment one way or another. Sansa bowed, pulse hammering. Outside, evening shadows angled long. She regrouped with Arya and Tyrion on an islet near the bridge of blue lanterns. Under a willow canopy, they exchanged gleaned fragments. Tyrion had secured shipping bills showing vast quantities of sulfur, pine resin, and obsidian delivered to a warehouse district along the Silver Canal. Arya had followed a stevedore to a tavern where masked men of various nations drank in silence, knives playing at belts. Sansa shared the copper rod. We enter the undervault tonight. Arya volunteered as shadow. Tyrion argued his size offered unassuming misdirection. They agreed all three would go, leaving Jalabar to ready the sea silk for fast departure. Night deepened to star-stained velvet. Cloaked in charcoal garments, they slipped along deserted quays, crossed rope bridges swaying above moonlit ripples, and descended marble stairs into the damp hush of the copperside undervault. At a heavy bronze door, Sansa presented the rod. The custodian, a mute woman with a spiral tattoo on her cheek, unlocked tumblers and gestured them onward. Vault lamplight revealed shelves of iron-bound crates, each stenciled with codes. Tyrion skimmed labels. OB16, OBXVII, Ouroboros shipments. Beneath, ledgers lay open on a slanted scriptorium. Sansa thumbed pages lifted with dust and ink. Columns of numbers followed routes. Salt Shore, Driftmark, Dark Den, Salazer cantons. At the margins, payments tallied to an account marked only with 3 concentric rings. The bank funds themselves, Tyrion murmured. Concentric rings, a secret subsidiary. Arya crouched, peering at crate seams. Or someone inside uses the bank's armor to pass unseen. She drew needle, pried lid. Inside lay small glass vials, fluid shimmering ambergreen. She sniffed, recoiled. Pine tar, brimstone, blood. Sudden footfalls echoed. Vault door boomed shut. Torchlight flickered at aisle's far end where cloaked figures advanced. Masks shaped like dragon jaws. Sansa counted 5, maybe 6. She slid ledger into cloak, drew slender dirk. Tyrion hefted a ledger as bludgeon. Arya stepped before them, needle glinting. Leave crates, growled a mask, accent bravosy yet strained. Debt you carry not meant for you. Sansa raised chin. The Iron Bank agreed to my inspection. They agreed to close account. The man flicked hand. 2 companions unslung hand crossbows. Arya moved like shadow broken loose. Steel flashed, first attacker's bolt missed, second found Tyrion's sleeve and thunked crate. 1 mask fell clutching throat. Sansa lunged, dirk slashing forearm of crossbowman. Oil lamp crashed, sparks hissed. More files erupted into acrid vapor. Tyrion overturned shelf, crates cascaded, smashing glass. Green flames blossomed as wildfire droplets kissed air. Out! Sansa cried, choking on smoke. Arya yanked vault keys from fallen custodian. They sprinted toward service tunnel. Behind, emerald bursts roared, devouring shelves, devouring masks. He chased them upstairs. They burst onto canal walkway as flames belched from grate, turning water jade. Alarms rang across copperside, bells clanging. Sansa staggered to parapet, coughing. Tyrion's sleeve burned, Arya slapped it out. Boats converged, bank wardens in watercraft dousing canal with sand slurry. In chaos, no one stopped 3 soot-stained intruders vanishing into alley maze. They regrouped at Sea Silk before dawn. Jalabar either scorched a tire. Good night, I take it? The best of the worst, Tyrion rasped, swigging wine. They cast off on ebb tide, oars muffled. Behind them, smoke plumed over bravos but did not spread. The Iron Bank's wardens contained the blaze, if not the secrets. On open sea, Sansa spread damaged ledger upon crate. Ink smeared but some entries legible. OBXIX schedule, cargo 132 files, destination Lawmouth Bay, rendezvous with Viper's Kiss. Date, 4 days hence. Lawmouth, Arya said. Near Storm's End. Sansa nodded. Gendry must prepare. They loosed pigeon spread for stamina, 1 to Dragonstone, 1 to King's Landing, 1 to Storm's End. Then sails unfurled, hull knifed through whitecaps. 3 days of hard wind and tempered oars shaved hours, gull cries announced Storm's End cliffs rising gray gold in dawn haze. Gendry awaited on rampart, hammer slung across back. Ravens reached, he greeted. I readied watchtowers, but Lawmouth folk scarce for soldiers since typhoid. Sansa explained. Gendry's jaw tightened. We'll muster fisherfolk, tide men. Stormlanders stand storms. They galloped to Lawmouth, a modest port where half-mended quay jutted into white-capped surf. Sansa scanned horizon. No ship sail yet. She ordered barricades, archers on cliffs, scorpions repurposed from castle walls. Tyrion supervised placement of pitch barrels labyrinth. Arya disappeared into fisher huts, gathering rumors. Sea Silk anchored in cove south of town. Jalabar's crew prepped nets weighted with iron hooks, 4 fishing galleys, he quipped. High tide approached, gulls wheeled. By late afternoon, lookout on Widow's Watch flagged shape on horizon. Slim cutter, serpent neck prow, Viper's Kiss. A second vessel ghosted behind, sails cunningly reefed under false merchant colors. Sansa, spyglass to eye, recognized hull lines identical to crate carriers and bravos. Signal horns blared. Town barred gates, villagers herded inside. Gendry's ballistae cranked. Arya crept along tidipools to hidden rope ladders, needle ready. Viper's Kiss slipped into harbor at dusk, anchors dropped. Figures lowered crates to longboats. Stormlander archers loosed warning volley, 2 oarsmen fell. The rest drew pistols, slender Myrish devices sparked flint, launching lead shot. 1 ballista quarrel skewered longboat, wild flames spilled from shattered crate into water, sending steam plume. Sellsword's cursed, cut Murrings, attempted retreat. Sea Silk surged from cove, nets cast. Iron Hook snagged Viper's Kiss rudder, tearing oak. Jalabar's crew hauled net tight, fouling prop. Gendry's catapult lobbed pitch cask, Tyrion's lit arrow ignited mast. Chaos erupted, second ship tried to flee, but clifftop scorpion bolt pierced sail. Arya climbed anchor chain, darting across deck, slashing lines. She vanished inside hold, emerged dragging captain at dagger point. Battle ended with deck ablaze and water slick with burning tar, but crates largely intact on shore. Unsullied detachments arrived at midnight, securing fireglass. Maesters quarantined files, triaging injuries. Sellsword prisoners claimed ignorance, they were paid in jade coin minted by city unknown. Their captain, under Arya's cold stare, confessed to meeting Braavosi emissary wearing mask of obsidian. Sansa dispatched ravens, the Ouroboros Brotherhood's shipping lanes crippled, next step to sever the forge. A coalition fleet would sail once new Ironborn longships built under Gendry's designs. Daenerys approved, offering Regal as sky shield. Victory tasted of iodine sea spray and sit, but Sansa knew fire yet smoldered. On Storm's End parapet she met Jon beneath full moon. Waves thundered below, wind whipped dire wolf mantle about her shoulders. This fight spreads, Jon said. We drag our people through war after war. We drag them toward tomorrow, she answered. But tomorrow always asks a toll. He studied her. You've changed, little sister. So have you, King Crow. She smiled faintly. Tell me truth, after war's end, will you return north forever? He looked to horizon's silver line. I will follow need. If south needs me, I remain. If north, I go. South needs healing, she whispered. North needs peace. I cannot give both. He placed gloved hand on hers upon crenel. Not alone. But together we can weave cloth strong enough. In moonlight she saw their joined shadows, wolf and wolf equal height now. She thought of Bran's dream of calm seas 40 years hence and wondered if such prophecy demanded endless vigilance from those who could never truly rest. Weeks rolled into months. The coalition fleet under Lord Valerion sailed to Braavos with warrants co-signed by Iron Bank directors newly humbled by Vault Inferno. The forge beneath Silverbank was seized, its alchemists clapped in bronze manacles, their knowledge parceled to maesters who vowed to lock it in obsidian vaults beneath the citadel. Ouroboros remnants scattered into stepstones, harried by Myrish corsairs hungry for bounty offered by Westeros. Some fled east to shadow ports, clinging to shattered myths. The Brotherhood's symbol lost dread as small folk painted its devouring dragon tail as children's chalk on cobbles, mocking triumph. But victory's glow also illuminated cracks in triune rule. Dorne's Prince Corran demanded repayment for ships lost protecting grain convoys, citing northern tariffs too lenient on riverlands. The Reach balked at new levies for building Night's Watch garrisons, arguing their harvests bankrolled half the realm. In small council, voices rose, fists slammed, alliances frayed. Sansa convened summit atop the Eyrie, high above summer storms, lords forced to breathe rarefied air and perspective. There, she unveiled the sevenfold accord, codifying proportional levies tied to harvest yield, granting regions veto blocks requiring 2/3 council override, and establishing rotating stewardship of Night's Watch funding. Heated debate melted into wary approval when Jon announced the wall's foundation stones were being re-enchanted by Children of the Forest, his first liaison with leaf-skinned emissaries south of Shattered Wall. Such wonders reminded lords that the realm's canvas sprawled beyond petty coffers. After accord signatures dried, Sansa walked the Ares moon door balcony, gazing at star-washed valleys. A flutter of wings brought raven-bearing scroll. She unfurled it, recognizing Peter's graceful script. I watch tides shift from modest shore and see banners billow with hope. Know that a mockingbird can sing contentedly in a simple cage when the realm hums its own song. Your song. I may have taught you the melody, but you have mastered the harmony. P. She folded it without smile or frown, only a deep exhale. Perhaps even spiders grew weary of webs. Years turned. Children born at the dawn of the long night now toddled among lemon trees in Red Keep terraces. Maesters inscribed a new dating, AF after frost. Trade leagues flourished, a canal dug through Maidenpool Marsh cut 10 days from Gulltown spice routes. Regal's offspring, 3 young drakes, soared as peacekeepers, quilts of emerald, bronze, and ash against clear sky. Sansa aged into early 30s, her copper hair deepening with auburn streaks, her gaze steady as winter ponds. She never took the high throne, yet in chronicles penned by Septon scribes she was the quiet regent, the Ivy Queen, the Iron Rose. Bards sang of her wisdom and of Jon's sword, of Daenerys' flame and Bran's sight. They also sang of Arya, whose blade kept shadows at bay, and of Peter, the mockingbird who traded song for silence. On a springy 15 years AF. Ghostly lights rippled across northern skies, aurora of green and violet. Bran's ravens carried word, the magic awakening within re-enchanted wall had stilled restive heart trees from Skagos to the neck. Old gods had accepted new balance. That night, Sansa walked King's Landing's outer gardens where saplings of weirwood sprouted in moonlit glades. She remembered father's pensive prayers, mother's steadfast arms, sister's laughter lost and found. The wind carried faint hint of snow, though air was warm, as if north whispered blessing. Jon emerged, hair touched with gray, ghost trotting at heel. He held parchment of finest Myrish silk. Bran's council proposes renaming the King's Road, he said. The Unity Way. Sansa traced script. A crownless name for crownless peace. He offered Quill. Will you sign? She did, ink shimmering under lantern glow. They walked along terrace, listening to distant harbor bells. Dragons roared playfully above dragonpit ruins, hatchlings spitting harmless sparks. Across city, small folk prepared for lantern night, a festival born from hunger for brightness after long darkness, paper globes hoisted skyward, each bearing written wish. Sansa paused at parapet, releasing deep breath. Do you think we have earned rest? Jon followed her gaze to lanterns ready on carts. Rest is for those buried beneath cairns. The living keep watch. He half smiled. But watch need not be lonely. She linked arm in his. Then keep watch with me. They lit first lantern together, pale blue for Winterfell's frozen pools. It rose slow, swaying until caught by gentle night wind, drifting toward stars. Others followed, red for dragon fire, green for fields, gold for sunlit seas. The sky became a galaxy of mortal hopes shimmering above turrets and alleys. Somewhere down a lanternlit lane, a minstrel plucked strings, singing verse unscripted. 7 kingdoms, 7 shards. Once were swords in tangled guards. Now are petals in a rose, blooming where the winter snows. Sansa closed her eyes, letting song wind through memory. She thought of the mockingbird feather still kept pressed in her diary. Reminder of cunning turned to caution, of love sharpened to wisdom. She thought of direwolves carved in old wood, of dragons coiling across obsidian blades, of children who would grow not knowing the taste of terror beneath frozen moon. She opened her eyes to a horizon awash with lantern constellations, and in that fragile light she saw the realm not as a throne to seize or a beast to tame, but as a vast, imperfect garden, forever in need of pruning, watering, and patient tending. She would tend it while her hands were steady. Others would tend it after her, and if ever chaos crept back across those fields, perhaps a mockingbird would sing warning, a dire wolf would howl rally, a dragon would roar defiance. Perhaps the song they had woven would carry through the ages, stitched into every heart that yearned for dawn after darkest night. Sansa Stark, Iron Rose of Westeros, whispered to lantern sky, remember. The breeze answered with gentle hush as though the very world breathed, we will. Moonlight spilled across the black glass expanse of the god's eye, silvering the water until it seemed a single unmoving mirror that reflected a sky littered with summer stars. Far below that vast and perfect calm, in the deep where crusted towers of old Harrenhal still reached blindly after centuries, the drowned stones remembered fire and ruin. Fish darted through broken window arches as though the lake were a palace turned inside out. There, in the very heart of stillness, a single tremor rippled out in widening rings. Something shifted, no more than a stone slipping loose, but that faint echo carried up, until the glassy surface quivered and shattered the starlight into dancing shards. No sentry on the ruined ramparts noted it, no heron stalking the shallows flinched. Only the reeds whispered that night, leaves rustling as though some secret thing unburied itself and breathed again. 200 leagues south, Sansa Stark startled awake in the Queen's Tower of the Red Keep, her breath caught in her throat. She did not know why the dream left her trembling, only that she'd seen water turn to smoke and heard, beneath the deepest dark, a heartbeat she could not name. Pulling her mantle tight, she crossed to the casement. Below, King's Landing glittered with lantern festivals, strings of soft candles bobbing down the black water like drifting constellations. Children's laughter floated up the stone and brick canyons. Yet as she watched a flame flicker inside each tiny boat, she caught herself counting them as if they were souls and she their steward. Too many, too fragile, she thought. One gust and a whole chain of lights could vanish. The knock came soft. When she opened her chamber door, Tyrion stood with a satchel slung over his shoulder, hair wind-tossed, excitement bright in mismatched eyes. "Our raven from the Citadel arrived," he said without preamble. "Maester Runsford finished testing the binding agents we retrieved from the Bravosi vault. He can neutralize the blood glass." He raised a rolled parchment. "But there's news of something else, a pattern of tremors recorded by far-flung monasteries." Karth, Lys, Volantis, even Old Town itself felt a shiver at precisely the same hour. Sansa pulled her robe closer. "What does it mean?" "That the world is very large, my queen, yet sometimes it hums one note." Tyrion's half-smile turned rueful. "And that note seldom heralds a lullaby." They convened a moon-hour council in the solar overlooking the gardens. Jon arrived from the barracks clad in simple black, sword-buckled. Daenerys came moments later, hair unbound, eyes sharp as glass. Arya slid from the terrace shadows without a sound. Davos joined, still smelling of harbor tar, and behind him Bran in his wheeled chair, pushed by gentle-handed Maester Wolkan. Only the crackle of a single lantern lit the room. Bran broke the hush first. "There was movement beneath the ruins of Harrenhal," he said, voice distant. "Stone that has not shifted in centuries, grinding like teeth." "Something opened." "A cell?" Jon asked, "or a grave?" Bran's pupils dilated, black swallowing hazel. "Both." "Neither." "A door, perhaps." He blinked. And wolves howled at Winterfell the same moment. The weirwoods felt it. Arya folded arms. "A door for what to walk through?" "That we must learn," Bran answered, "before it closes again or remains forever open." Dawn bruised the eastern windows pink while they shaped a plan. Bran, Davos, and a cadre of chosen ravens would fly north to Winterfell, seeking wisdom of the trees. Daenerys would take Regal, circle the God's Eye, and read the winds for sulfur or smoke. Sansa would stay in the capital, for someone must steady the realm if another chaos rose. Tyrion placed the Citadel's neutralizing formula in a strongbox and vowed to oversee the mass production of counteragents. By first bell, armored couriers galloped from all the city gates carrying sealed orders. Sansa watched them disappear down dusty roads before turning to find Peter Baelish's face in her mind, how he once said a realm in crisis was ripe ground for power. She whispered to the empty portico, "Not this time," and set about proofing the city's stores of grain and oil. Raven wings cut northern skies so cold the air tasted of iron. Bran's mind flew with them, his frail body swaying in the saddle lamp along the King's Road. Through talons that grasped icy drafts, he saw the wall reborn. It rose not as sheer white monolith but as living mosaic, stones fused with translucent veins where children of the forest wove sap and sorcery into mortar. Atop those stones, new watchtowers smoldered with frosty blue runes that pulsed in slow heartbeat, a promise that whatever lay beyond would break teeth against this bulwark. Yet Bran's sight drifted further south to the shattered towers of Harrenhal, half drowned in the God's Eye. He felt old fires there, coals that should have burnt to ash but yet glowed. He followed heat into gloom, down corridors that no longer existed in stone but did in memory. There, beneath the rubble, a vault yawned like the mouth of the world. In it stood fragments of fused sword steel, twisted in the shapes of screaming men, relics of dragon wrath. Between two such figures something pulsed, soft, crimson, organic like a heartbeat encased in obsidian shell. Bran reached for it with his third eye and recoiled at the whiff of rot, a vengeance of a queen's dying curse. He startled awake in saddle as Davos reined up before him. Snow gusted sideways though it was midsummer south of the neck. They were almost to Moat Cailin. Bran told Davos, "There is life and death at Harrenhal." "That's a riddle I'd rather a maester solve," Davos muttered, rubbing gloved hands. "No maester can," Bran said. "It is a seed of shadow. And it is sprouting." Daenerys soared above the God's Eye on Regal's sweeping wings, his shadow oaring across the mirrored lake. At dawn's angle she saw eddies, circular ripples not born of wind but of some upwelling current far below. She guided Regal into a banking spiral, descending until his claws skimmed the water. Steam curled where his fire-hot breath touched the surface, revealing plumes of bubbles escaping from cracks. She felt the dragon shudder beneath her as though he tasted something bitter in the air. She knew the stories, Harren the Black's tower walls melted by Balerian's flame. But flame could leave behind more than ruin, it could crystallize hatred until it congealed into something that remembered pain. She wondered if dragons left ghosts. A hush fell as she circled. Water stilled. Then a single upward spout burst, not vapor but blood-dark liquid that steamed. Regal roared, banking sharply. A second plume erupted farther off, accompanied by a thunder beneath the waves. Daenerys steadied her mount and watched in horror as black spires, no, bones, rose like tide-driven driftwood. Each was a rib thicker than a galley mast, slick with slime. In their cradle floated something that glowed with internal emerald light. She had no name for it. It resembled an egg, big as a wine cask, its shell faceted obsidian bound by veins that pulsed. With every pulse the water boiled. Regal bellowed, a scream of challenge or fear. She turned him skyward and raced for the Red Keep. Sansa met Daenerys in the Hand's Tower Solar, Tyrion and Jon already present. Daenerys spoke only a handful of words, something is being born. She sketched the thing. Tyrion's face drained of color. He fetched an ancient volume from his traveling valise, a tome rescued from Dragonstone vaults before the long night. Its pages whispered as he turned to an illustration, a drawing of Aegon the Conqueror standing over a black egg streaked with red cracks. Dragonfire can quicken dragon eggs, Tyrion said. But this is no dragon. This is Balerian's leftover grief alchemized by centuries beneath a poisonous lake. He tapped margin notes. Maester Seldric speculated that melted steel and flesh formed a worm heart, a seed of living conflagration. Jon frowned. So it's alive? Alive enough to grow, Tyrion answered. And if it hatches, gods help the realm. Arya slipped from alcove where she'd stood silent. We go break it, then? Daenerys shook head. Dragonfire may feed it, not kill it. We need the Citadel formula. Obsidian binder mixed with Runsford salts. If we coat the shell, perhaps we can stop its beating. Sansa's mind raced. We'll need barrels enough to flood the vault. And men willing to dive. I know divers, said Gendry, stepping through doorway unannounced, travel dust dulling his tuner blue armor. Stormlander pearl fishers owe me. They can work underwater with diving bells. Arya's smile flashed. Then you and I lead the raid. I'll cut throats above while you pour steel below. Sansa's gaze swept the room. I will go too. Jon bristled, but she raised a hand. The realm is my charge. I won't order men into that darkness and stay behind light. Jon bowed head. Then I go as your sword. The quiet region and the White Wolf, the Dragon Queen and her hand, the Faceless Blade and the Blacksmith King, 6 figures set their wills as one. They planned through the night. By sunrise, Raven sped to Old Town requesting the full stores of Runsford binder. Valerion Dromans prepared to sail upriver with cargo holds turned alchemical cisterns. Stormlander pearl fishers arrived with bell helmets of hammered copper and hoses bound in boiled leathers. Harrenhal rose before them 3 days later, gargantuan shadows against midday glare. The lake lapped eerily calm. Sansa felt its stillness like held breath. The divers anchored pontoons near the rib spires. Gendry oversaw pumps rigged to fill bells with Runsford slurry, a pale bluish paste that smoked under sun. Maester said it would cling to obsidian, siphon its heat, and seal living stone inert. Jon and Arya led strike teams into the ruined keep, clearing rookeries where Brotherhood remnants had nested. Crossbow bolts clattered, needle flashed, foes fell. Jon's Valyrian blade Longclaw rang like cold thunder each time steel met steel, until silence ruled again. Below water, divers descended, tether lines creaking. Gendry monitored pulleys. Daenerys circled overhead astride Regal, eyes scanning for threats. Sansa stood at makeshift command on the lakeshore, parchment of timetables gripped tight. Then it began. The lake's surface trembled. A deep rumble rolled, vibrating pontoons. Pressure spike, Gendry shouted. Haul them up. Pulleys squealed as first bell ascended. Through glass portal Sansa saw a diver thrashing, helmet fogged crimson. Before they could clear water, a geyser of boiling lake burst, hurling pontoons aside. A rib spire snapped, slamming like a catapult into barge deck. Men tumbled, screaming. From the rupture rose the worm heart, shedding obsidian shards that hissed like serpents. It was larger now, size of wagon cask, surface webbed with fissures glowing molten green. Each heartbeat splashed arcs of emerald-lit water. Arya from Keep Parapet loosed a dragonglass-dipped arrow, it pinged useless from shell. Jon hefted a jar of binder, hurled, it burst into blue smoke on contact, but cracks sealed almost as fast. Sansa's breath shuddered. Daenerys guided Regal into dive. The great dragon's chest swelled, but at last moment she pulled up, remembering fear of feeding flame. Instead Regal beat wings, raising gale that toppled the wormheart back below surface. For heartbeat it sank, and then water glowed brighter, bubbles roiling like cauldron. This ends now, Sansa said. She snatched torch soaked in pitch. plunged it into barrel of binder, igniting whipcrack flame. Jon's eyes widened as she rolled barrel from ramp, shouting, "In winter, we bury seeds beneath snow." The barrel struck water, sank beside the worm heart. Flame met binder and molten shell. A deafening hiss, then a bloom of azure steam engulfed half the lake. Shockwave knocked Regal sideways. Daenerys clung. When steam cleared, water churned but no green glow emanated. Obsidian shards floated dull black. Divers surfaced coughing but alive. Silence fell broken only by crackle of cooling stone. Arya raised fist from parapet. Jon exhaled. Gendry wiped sweat and binder paced from brow. At lakeshore, Sansa dropped to knees, exhaustion cascading. She felt arms around her, Jon's, steady. Daenerys landed regal, rushed forward. "You risked everything," she said. Sansa managed a trembling smile. "Risk is seed of hope," she murmured. "Sometimes it blooms." Word of the warm hearts breaking raced on raven wings to every corner of the realm. Small folk lit nights with azure lanterns in honor of the strange blue steam that saved them. Bards composed new stanzas. Where emerald serpents sought to rise, a rose of frost erased its eyes. The wolf and dragon stood as one. Till dawn refired tomorrow's sun. Yet Sansa felt only relief laced with sobering clarity. The world's deep scars still ached, its buried curses still stirred. Winning one piece meant guarding it thereafter, vigilant. And so she turned to finishing tasks left undone by crises, establishing libraries in every holdfast, forging roads across marsh and mountains, endowing orphanages where bastards and small folk children learned letters beside night suns. Peter Baelish watched from his modest maiden pool balcony as tariffs he once juggled grew into sturdy civic budgets. He wrote no more riddles, merely neat ledgers and an occasional note to Sansa praising a particular road or policy. She answered seldom but always politely, aware that even a caged mockingbird sang because she had a loud song. Bran reopened Raven's Rest Tower at Winterfell for scholars of magic and memory, inviting children of the forest to teach the art of listening to trees. Jon split seasons between the North and Capital, his title changing in ballads from King Crow to the Bridgewolf. Daenerys founded a draconic conservatory on Dragonstone, training riders not for war but for horizons, scouts mapping seas beyond sunset. Years mellowed sharp edges. Tyrion sparred verbally with Galad Rowan, first speaker for the Commons under Sevenfold Accord, an office he'd helped craft. Their debates became plays performed by mummers from White Harbor to Sunspear, laughter forging unity. When Sansa turned 40, white streaks graced her temples, not frost of despair but pale laurels of experience. She toured the realm one final time on royal progress. Winterfell's Godswood, where snowflakes floated like blossoms. Riverrun's river, where salmon leapt. Highgarden's terraces bursting red. Dorne's bone-white sands shimmering. Old Town's high tower, where the citadel bells chimed research breakthroughs inspired by Runsford salts. At each stop, crowds greeted her not with shouts of your grace, but with quiet bows and heartfelt gifts. A loaf of honey bread shaped like a wolf. A carved lamp of driftwood. A cloak stitched from many region threads. She wove those tokens into a tapestry hung in the Red Keep's grand hall. A map of the realm stitched by its people. On the 20th lantern night after frost, Sansa lit the first lantern with a new generation beside her. Jon's nephews, Daenerys and Gendry's daughter Marys, whose tiny dragon hatchling perched upon her shoulder, and Arya's ward Lara, a street child turned promising scholar. They watched lanterns rise and drift. Sansa told them the stories not of battles but of choices, risks, and caretaking. When starlight hid behind drifting lanterns, Sansa felt the world exhale again. In that hush she heard no drums of war, only the quiet murmur of many lives weaving forward. She laid a hand atop Mary's, guiding the child's fingers to release her lantern. It lifted, catching a stray breeze, bobbing across the sky until it joined countless others. High above, Regal and his brood tilted wings, gliding gentle paths through the glowing swarm without extinguishing a single light. Peter Baelish, from his balcony far to the northeast, watched lantern after lantern ascend. He lifted a cup of mellow arbor red, toasting the night. A younger steward asked what he saw. Peter answered, voice gone soft, a realm that sings so well it has forgotten the need to whisper. He sipped, eyes reflecting lantern constellations like distant stars. Back in the Red Keep's garden, Sansa Stark closed her eyes. The dream that had once woken her. The lake mirroring stars, then shattering, flitted through mind. But now the mirror mended. Ripples stilled. Starlight shone unbroken. The heartbeat in the deep had been stilled, not by swords or crowns alone, but by hands joined, wolf, dragon, rose, and yes, even mockingbird feathers. She breathed, and in that breath she tasted apple blossoms from the north and sea salt from Dorne blended as one. She smiled. The realm would one day forget her name. Names always fade, but it would remember the way lanterns rose after darkness, and the steady glow of peace tended like a living hearth. And should darkness ever rise again, somewhere a child would lift a lantern skyward, a dire wolf would howl, a dragon would roar, and the song would begin anew. No subtitles, no titles, only the endless script of people who refused to let night reign. In that knowledge, Sansa Stark finally allowed herself to rest.